Hello, good morning. It is 7 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilfred, a very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
The public face of Trump's ICE campaign in Minneapolis is leaving the city days after another American citizen was shot dead by officers.
Rebellion grows over the decision to block Andy Burnham standing as an MP as the Labour Party worry about losing the by-election entirely.
The Prime Minister is leaving for China on the very same day that new reports claim China hacked the phones of officials in Number 10.
Also today, it's Holocaust Memorial Day. We're going to be hearing the stories of survivors and remembering the people who were murdered, including 6 million Jews.
We'll also have a searing report from Ukraine, where people are facing freezing winter temperatures without any power or heating.
Very good morning to you and welcome to the programme. Well, the top immigration official in Minneapolis is expected to leave the city in what many are seeing as an attempt by President Trump to de-escalate tensions following the killing of a second US citizen over the weekend.
So his name is Gregory Bovino. He's become really the face of the Trump administration's ICE operation in Minneapolis. He's now going back to his old job on the border, and a different member of Trump's team is going to lead immigration efforts there. And look, it's going to be, I think it's fair to say, pretty welcome news in Minneapolis, where tensions are still very high. Martha Kellner's there. She sent this report.
On this street in suburban Minneapolis, everyone is on alert. They believe this car has ICE immigration agents inside. They're doing what they can to disrupt. In Washington, President Trump is trying to de-escalate this situation, which has become politically poisonous. But tensions remain high. You think that there's ICE agents inside this car?
I think so. I mean, that's what the neighborhood networks are saying.
President Trump has said that he's looking at reducing the number of ICE agents in this city.
No, they need to get out, all of them, every single one.
What is it doing to this place?
It's creating this suspicion of, like, every car that goes by, everybody watches as it goes by because you don't know.
They have just shot a man. They shot that guy. I know.
This video shows the aftermath of the killing of Alex Pretty. A doctor who was nearby rushed to this scene. He says he was initially blocked by immigration agents from providing medical care to Pretty. In court documents, the doctor said officers appeared to be focused on counting the victim's bullet wounds instead of performing CPR. Pretty was initially cast by the Trump administration as a domestic terrorist intent on a massacre, despite there being no evidence of that. But the White House is now striking a softer tone. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying President Trump will work alongside Minnesota's Democratic governor.
It is President Trump's hope and wish and demand for the resistance and chaos to end today. That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota.
Trump is now sending border czar Tom Homan to handle immigration enforcement in Minneapolis. Gregory Bovino, who had been leading the crackdown here, has been stripped of his role as Border Patrol commander. He was the public face of this immigration blitz that outraged many with aggressive tactics and his handling of Pretty's shooting. All over Minneapolis, there are quiet and steely acts of resistance. On the roadside in minus 23 degrees, a nurse is performing her own.
You know, they disarmed him and then shot him 10 times. And man, if that doesn't wake up every person in America, I can't see how anybody could feasibly or reasonably support the Trump administration or be comfortable with what's happening here in Minnesota.
Do you think Minnesota has been very deliberately targeted by President Trump?
There's an example being made out of us. We're a functioning welfare state. We take care of our people, and we're still a donor state. We vote blue. I think Donald Trump and his administration thought that it would be easy to walk into Minneapolis and rile people up.
Inside, get the lettuce inside.
Outside a church nearby, people are collecting collecting and organising aid boxes. It's a scene more common to a disaster zone. Food and hygiene supplies ready to be delivered to members of the immigrant community.
It doesn't make sense not to help them. There are people that, are in process, they're afraid to go out, but there are people that are already legal citizens that are afraid to go out. So I think we need to help them. This place has been great.
Thank you.
Just throw everything on top. I got the sideboards.
People here are fighting against the crackdown on migrants in so many ways. And maybe the climb down in Washington suggests it's working. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Minneapolis.
So, Martha, they're saying, is this the moment when the protests are working, that we have seen some kind of change of tone, tactic from the White House? Wills, what your take?
Well, I think the very fact that Greg Bovino is being withdrawn, as we said in that report, he's the head of Border Patrol. And I think when you look at the sort of White House personnel involved, if what's being reported is what materialised in the next couple of days, I think it's also interesting. So Kirsty Noem's the head of Homeland Security, who Greg Bovino officially reports to. And if she is now stood down a bit as being the White House spokesperson on this, and Tom Homan, who is Trump's border czar, is his title, sort of picks up both roles. He's the White House spokesperson for it and the person that's now going into Minneapolis to lead things on the ground. I think it gives a chance for the tension to come down as well at the political level. Interestingly, Tom Homan, he's very, very tough on immigration, and no two ways about that. He did also used to work in the Obama administration. He worked in border enforcement then, as well as obviously leading things for President Trump now. But he's already said he's had a phone call with Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis.
He was the one who said, I should F off.
Exactly.
Right?
And you basically, for most, obviously there's major tensions on the ground, but for most of the last month, you've had the mayor of Minneapolis on the ground there, and Kirsty Noem, in White House, the head of Homeland Security, giving totally polar opposite press conferences, as if different events took place. And now those two people in charge, Tom Homan and the mayor, are going to be meeting. I mean, that's a big step forward, at least, albeit a long way still to go, we shall see. Yeah,
this is it. And whether or not the sort of change of personnel actually signifies a change of policy as well.
I think the next thing to potentially watch that people are talking about is, does President Trump go further in trying to sort of rehabilitate the image and the problems this has caused across the political aisle? And does Kirsty Noem or someone lose their role? Is there a full person for this going forward? And I think that'll be really interesting because, his lieutenants have been doing his bidding, even if some might wonder, on the legality or the morals of some of that. You start to throw one under the bus, what does that do to the loyalty more broadly of your lieutenants going forward? So lots to watch, I think, going forward.
We can talk UK politics now, because, look, it's been another week of totally breakneck news, frankly. The rebellion over the decision to block Andy Burnham from standing as an MP is growing, not least because, a lot of other Labour MPs are now really worried about whether they're going to lose the Gorton and Denton by-election to Reform. Well, Mai's here to talk us through it. We've got this letter. There's reports that have been signed by up to 50 MPs. Is this grumbling from the usual suspects, or is this something that could actually get Keir Starmer to change his mind?
Well, I think we'll have to see when we find out exactly what the names on that letter are. So far, there are reports there's around 50. Now, we haven't confirmed that, and we don't know the names on that letter. And therefore, depending on who signed it, if you might get some surprises, then yes, you might think to yourself, actually, maybe Starmer's in a bit more danger. But Starmer's made a calculation here that he feels there were no good options. And actually, he would rather potentially delay the pain, buy himself a bit more time, just in case something were to come around by May, than potentially allow Andy Burnham to come in and essentially take over. And so he's made that calculation. Now, he may live to regret that, or maybe he'll end up looking back and thinking that was a great idea. But it's caused a lot of unease in the Labour Party amongst some of these MPs that have signed that letter, because they are believing it makes them look weak, it makes them look like they can't actually win that by-election. Now, I would say let's not be too hasty. We still don't know who is standing in this by-election for all these different parties yet, and the candidate can turn an election around. Sometimes things can be won purely just on a local face, a local name. So it depends on who they select. But the general consensus, including among Reform, is that Reform might actually put them to the post on this. Reform are feeling very, very confident. Reform now saying that Andy Burnham not being in the race is actually an advantage to them.
What I don't get on this is why this by-election is going to be soon, right? It's going to be end of February, as opposed to tied together the May local elections. Yeah. What I don't get with this is why that's better for 10 Downing Street. I mean, the only argument I can see in favour of it would be if you're planning to frame the May local elections as, oh, it's just the local elections, nothing to see here. Good luck in selling that argument. And instead, you're going to have two moments of potential jeopardy rather than just one. Yes. And one coming quite soon.
Absolutely. The argument would be rip the plaster off quickly, get it over and done with. If you think you're going to lose, just get it done. And then you can focus on May, and May can be a different narrative and a different story. Now, if they end up losing loads in May and the by-election, then your argument stands, which is why not just do it all at the same time and have one big catastrophe in one moment.
Rip one plaster off.
Rather than ripping, you know, death by 1,000 cuts almost. Yeah. So it depends on how you think you're going to fare, I suppose. But I feel like the argument would be get it over and done with, and also say no to Andy Burnham, get the by-election done, put that to bed, and then Andy Burnham and that kind of talk of Andy Burnham goes away when that by-election ends.
I think the problem is it's a bit like whack-a-mole. You know, if it's not Andy Burnham, then it's going to be West Streeting. If it's not West Streeting, it's going to be Angela Rayner. If it's not Angela Rayner, it's going to be a Miliband. It's like, it doesn't really work like that. Yeah, but we shall see.
We shall see.
Ari, thank you very much indeed.
Now, one of the things we'll be talking about a lot this week is the Prime Minister's trip to China. He leaves for Beijing tonight, but just as he goes, there are new reports this morning about China hacking the phones of senior officials in Number 10 between 2021 and 2024. Interestingly, so this is by a Telegraph report that's come to light, and it's saying people very close to the Prime Ministers of that time, of which there were three, confusingly, of course, and saying that those people's phones were being hacked for 3 years. It only came to light by a US intelligence investigation, and so there were 3 years where our security services weren't aware of it. Various comments suggesting that wasn't necessarily as deep diving as you say. There's sort of two sides to this. I kind of think of, on one, it's worrying, and one hopes if it happened, our security service jumped on it quite quickly. On another level, it's like, go figure. We know this is what China does, and I think that's actually the central tee-up to the Prime Minister's trip to China, which is, yeah, we want to trade, but you've got to be very, very careful on pretty much everything else. And it's a very tough, I think, balancing act for him on what to do, what tone to strike there. And interestingly as well, just again, as a big problem is brewing at home, he's going overseas, and the extent to which he can come back with something that makes everyone here think that was worth it. Yeah, and Number 10 currently saying that this is happened under the previous administrations. It's not something for them to comment on. One worth putting to Steve Reid at the government, which we'll be doing in just a few moments' time. Now, a survivor of the 2023 Nottingham attacks has told Sky News that more responsibility needs to be taken for failures in the lead-up to the incident. Wayne Burkett was among 3 people who survived when Valdo Calacane ploughed into those people with a van. So he'd already, at that point, killed the school caretaker, Ian Cates, and also 2 students, Barnaby Webber and Grace and Mally Kumar. Calacane had been under the care of Nottinghamshire's mental health services in the years leading up to the attack, and a report found that some of those failures might have contributed to the tragedy that happened. Our communities correspondent, Lisa Holland, has been speaking to Mr Burkett, who decided to speak out as the public inquiry approaches. How difficult has your life been since the attack? It's been like being born again. I've had to learn to read, write, know what a ladybird is. Lots of things I've had to learn. I had to talk to people, I had to use a phone. Lots of things. It's like starting life again. Obviously, I've had brain problems, but now I'm seeing things more clear, a bit more. I can talk to people, which I couldn't do before. And things are sinking into my head now about, like, this CQC what's just come out, and about the police. Before, it never bothered me because I don't remember none of it. So, but now I think something needs to be done because somebody else is going to die soon, very soon.
Do you feel that you were failed by the mental health services in Nottinghamshire?
They have let us down, yeah. More money should be spent on it.
This is the mental health services. And how do you feel they let you down?
I'll let him out, let him escape. I'm saying someone's got to take the blame for this man coming out and killing them poor students and poor raincoats, and then trying to kill me and Sharon and Austin. It's just not. Someone's got to take the blame for it.
Well, Lisa Holland will be joining us a little bit later with more details on that.
Now, there's a pretty fascinating new study out today. It's about the impact of the menopause, because researchers say that the changes in the brain are actually similar to those seen in Alzheimer's.
It's a really large survey run by the University of Cambridge. They found that the loss of grey matter might partly explain why women are at a greater risk of dementia than men. Well, Oliver's here with more of the details. Oliver, what comes out of this Cambridge University study?
It's a huge study. 125,000 women's data was analysed, and then there was 11,000 MRI brain scans that were carried out. And what they found out is that it's generally the same parts of the brain that are affected by Alzheimer's, where they see these changes that happen when women go through the menopause. And it affects three different parts of the brain, one of them being the hippocampus, which deals with learning and memory, another part of the brain that deals with attention and regulating emotions. And what's really quite interesting is that the Alzheimer's Society says that 2/3 of all cases of Alzheimer's disease in the UK happens in women, and they think that these links could then potentially explain why women seem to have more of a chance of getting Alzheimer's than men.
I mean, that stat I found really quite striking. I didn't realise that, I'll be honest. I mean, it is very clear that more women are getting Alzheimer's. I guess the question that lots of people will be asking is if they start to understand a bit more about the causes for that, if it is linked to menopause, is there something they can do about it?
Yeah, and look at what's already on the market. So one of the options at the moment is HRT, hormone replacement therapy. Actually, in the UK, the number of women that take HRT is quite low compared to other countries. Around 15% of women take it to help with some of those symptoms, including difficulty sleeping, temperature control. You know, a lot of women go through hot flushes. Also, just the general brain fog that can come with HRT. But what they found is that women that take the tablets predominantly don't get any sort of benefit in terms of losing that grey matter. And the other issue that they found is actually a lot of the women that go on HRT have reported that they have increased chances of having mental health issues, but it's not clear whether they had pre-existing mental health issues going in beforehand. But it is one of those things, trying to find out what they can do with this information, how they can benefit.
So the early studies then don't seem to say that HRT is helping with the Alzheimer's link then, or I guess it's quite early, they don't know, but...
It doesn't seem to be helping at the minute, and this is one of the biggest studies that's been carried out so far, but it's certainly an interesting part. The key advice, though, is if you want to try and reduce your risk of getting Alzheimer's, cut out smoking, cut out drinking, and try and exercise some more.
Oliver, great stuff. Thanks so much. Now, at least 30 people have died as winter storms continue to spread across 2/3 of the US.
So more than 500,000 homes have been left without power, thousands of flights delayed or cancelled as a result of what's been called the biggest ice storm in decades.
Meanwhile, in the UK, the Met Office have issued an amber weather warning for parts of the southwest this morning as the latest named storm arrives. These are the latest pictures of Port Leven harbour coming in this morning. We've also got pictures of St Austell in Cornwall, which is looking fairly chilly and windy and wet.
Now, we've got a bit of breaking news to bring you now. It's an announcement from the government, some kind of long-awaited, I guess, reforms when it comes to leasehold properties. So, what can we tell you? Ground rents are going to be capped at £250 a year for leaseholders across England and Wales. This is what the Prime Minister has announced on TikTok, interestingly, in the last few minutes. He also said that new leasehold flats are going to be banned. So an awful lot to get through with Steve Reed, who is joining us now. Great to have you here. Thank you very much for being with us. So, abolishing ground rent, what's the idea with that?
Well, I mean, ground rent
Not abolishing, sorry, capping.
Capping. It will lead to abolition. in the end, or going down to zero. But this ground rent is something, if you're a leaseholder, you have to pay a company or an individual ground rent, but they don't provide you with any services. It's a bit of a scam, really, and people feel and describe it as a racket. And you have no idea how much you're going to have to pay from year to year, how much it's going to increase. You're paying money for nothing. People have been campaigning to abolish this for decades. So today is quite a historic moment for leasehold reform, because this government is going to do what we said in our manifesto. We're going to cap it at a maximum of £250. So once that comes into force, and it will happen in this Parliament, once it's gone through full legislation, nearly 1 million people are going to see their ground rents reduced, and nearly 5 million people will know that their ground rents will never go above £250.
So, as someone who's lived in a leasehold flat, I feel that ground rent can sometimes be the least of your worries, right?
Yeah.
If you've got, like, major works coming along, it can be tens of thousands of pounds, work you've got no say over, no control over, you can't bid on it. I mean, it can be a complete nightmare, right? Yeah. So you're saying that you're banning new leasehold properties.
Yes.
Should you not go further and just get rid of all of them?
Well, my colleague Matt Pennycooks, who is the housing minister, is going to stand up in the House of Commons later this morning and announce our Leasehold Reform Act. So that will be talking about how we're going to move to a new system of common hold. I shouldn't preempt too much what he says, or I get in trouble with the Speaker of the House of Commons, but our intention is to do what you've been describing. In the meantime, we launched a consultation last summer about the charges, the service charges leaseholders have to pay. Fleecehold, a lot of people call it, because they feel they're being literally fleeced of their money without ever being told what the money is being used for, whether the managing agents have properly tendered to get the best value for the contractors coming in to do whatever work it might be. We're going to change all of that, and announcements will be made following the consultation over coming weeks. But we are committed to a comprehensive reform of leasehold so that we can abolish it and give people who live in flats, and 5 million of them in this country, much more certainty and control over the charges they have to pay.
You say you want to kind of abolish it. I mean, what's the kind of time frame for doing that, do you think, then?
Well, we'll be able to announce that when we announce the results of the consultation, but the intention is within this Parliament. No new flats will be allowed to be leasehold.
But at some point, you're going to get rid of the existing ones as well. I guess this is what I'm trying to work out, because 5 million people are going to be very interested in what you've got to say on this.
No, absolutely they are. Because of the conventions of the House of Commons, I can't go too far on that. My colleague will be announcing that in the House of Commons later today. What people can know right now is that ground rent is going to be capped at £250, so you don't have to worry anymore about your ground rent shooting up and up and up. We're already doing a consultation on leasehold charges. I mean, and as you were saying, that's one of the most frequent issues that people raise with me as a constituency MP. So we're going to act so there's greater transparency, greater control for leaseholders. The Housing Minister, Matt Pennycook, will be announcing in the House of Commons today our further reforms to end leasehold completely.
Can I touch about Andy Burnham?
Of course.
Because we've got all these Labour MPs who signed this letter, right, who want Andy Burnham to be allowed to stand in this by-election. Are they wasting their time? Is there any chance that the decision could be reviewed?
Well, you know, they're entitled to their view, of course they are, but Labour's ruling National Executive Committee took the decision this weekend that it is better for Andy Burnham to continue to serve out his full 4-year term as Mayor of Manchester.
So I guess what they're saying is that there should be more people on the Executive Committee, like more union voices, a wider group of people.
Well, there were union voices there as well, and it was overwhelming. It was 8-1. It wasn't a close vote at all. And the reason is, having Andy as the candidate, he would be a fantastic candidate. I hope to see him back in Parliament in due course. But having him as the candidate now would then require a by-election for the Mayor of Greater Manchester. That's the equivalent of 20 parliamentary constituencies when he's only halfway through his term. So the reason we have that in our rule book, that mayors or police and crime commissioners have to seek permission, is so that we don't have unnecessary major by-elections across whole regions. The Labour Party will now move on, select a candidate, and we will fight to win the Gorton and Denton by-election.
You said before it would be an inconvenience for these voters. I mean, is democracy an inconvenience?
Well, of course it isn't. It's very important you have a democracy. But I think
try telling that to those 29 local councils that you've postponed. Well, voters have a right to expect. They want more voting.
Voters have a right to expect that if they elect a politician to a job, that they will serve out and do the full term for the job that they've elected them to do. The local government reorganisation point that you've just raised is we've got those councils are all being abolished. We want to speed up the move to the new councils because it will save millions of pounds that we can then invest in things voters care about, like fixing potholes and caring for older people.
We know it's also about leadership, right? People coming out yesterday say it's about avoiding the psychodrama. But I guess the question that I've got is, if it's not Andy Burnham, it's always going to be someone. If it's not Burnham, it's going to be Streeting. If it's not Streeting, it's going to be Rayner. If it's not Rayner, it's going to be Ed Miliband. It's like whack-a-mole. You know, these issues on leadership don't just disappear if you get rid of Andy Burnham.
Well, what we used to see with the Conservatives was they would kick out their leader every year, every 2 years, and it led to absolute chaos. We've got a leader, and he's leading big change in this country. Wages are now rising faster than prices for the first time in over a decade. National Health Service waiting lists are falling at the fastest rate for 15 years. We're going to get out there and focus on the things that matter to the British public, not have the kind of psychodramas that brought the Conservative Party to their knees.
Keir Starmer travelling to China today. On the very same day, The Telegraph has a story that China hacked into the phones, they say, of government officials, people within Number 10. I mean, it sounds like a pretty major security breach. Are you looking into it?
Well, I mean, there's a long-standing convention that governments can't comment on particular security issues, but people should be reassured that national security in every single respect is the top priority for this government. That's why we've invested an additional £170 million, for instance, strengthening our cyber security in that respect. But of course, we and the UK's outstanding world-leading security forces are well aware of the risks and are managing those risks.
If national security is the top priority, as you say, was it really a good idea to give permission for China to build this big embassy right in the middle of London on top of a load of critical internet cables?
Well, the security minister went through all of this in the House of Commons and answered all the questions that MPs had to put to him. The security services had reassured the government fully that there were no outstanding concerns to do with that. In fact, they made the point it is better for UK security to have the Chinese embassy in one site than spread across 7 different sites as it is currently.
I guess my broader question is, you know, we've got these reports on hacking, we've said yes to this mega embassy, Keir Starmer's out there in China, he's going to China. Are we a bit naive about the risk that China poses?
No. Fully alive to what the risks may be, not just from China, but from any foreign source that it might come from. Fully alive to that. China is also the second biggest economy on the planet. Over 370,000 jobs in the UK depend on trade with China. It's quite right we should do what we need to trade with China, but national security will always override all other concerns. That is precisely as it should be.
OK, Steve Reid, thank you very much indeed. Steve Reid speaking to us there. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the environment. We'll be talking to the broadcaster, environmental campaigner, someone you might have heard of, Chris Packham.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think is really unusual? Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Welcome back. The US has now officially left the Paris Climate Agreement, a global pact, of course, that had been designed to avoid the worst consequences of climate change.
So Donald Trump said it's not in the American people's interest. It's despite the fact the US is one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases. But I guess the question now is, can the rest of the world do enough to make a difference?
Well, we can speak now to the broadcaster environmental campaigner, Chris Packham. Chris, great to have you with us. Clearly today is the day they officially left, but for people like yourselves, for the world at large, was this already kind of quite priced in and established that they're no longer part of it?
I guess this is the rubber stamping of their decision to withdraw from the agreement. We should remind the viewers that the agreement was put in place 2015, 2016, and its mandate was for all of those signatories, which were at least 195 countries from around the world, to try and keep the global temperature below 1.5, above pre-industrial levels. If not 1.5, then 2. And what we've seen in the interim is that that temperature record is in danger of being broken. We've seen regularly temperatures in excess, average temperatures in excess of 1.5. And I think the overall average is 1.4. So we're heading in the wrong direction. And as you mentioned, the United States is one of the largest emitters, and therefore someone who globally our species was looking for, looking to make significant inroads in reducing the amount of carbon going into the atmosphere. But we find ourselves with the Trump administration, who want to drill, baby, drill, who seem to have significant interest in Venezuela on account of its oil, and therefore a clear intention to burn more fossil fuels, which goes against everything that the scientists, the Climate Change Committee, IPCC, all of those who really should be governing the way that we use our fuels and produce carbon going into the future, saying that we simply can't do.
I'm interested in your take on the debate here in the UK, because it feels like it's a very live debate, between people who are saying that it's really important to keep focusing on net zero, others saying that actually that went too far, that we need to think about what people can afford, the cost of living. What's your message to politicians here in the UK?
Can we afford to try and live on a dying planet? I mean, the gravity of the situation is unfortunately not presented to most people most of the time. And therefore, insidious lies and misinformation about, for instance, the cost of net zero are perpetuated in the media, principally, of course, originating on social media, because those that want bad business as usual are a very powerful lobbying body. And they've spent a long time amassing a huge amount of money and influence, particularly within governments, to steer away from these policies. But look, I go back to the fact that we have to listen to the scientists, and the scientists are telling us that amongst a plethora of changes we'll have to implement, keeping fossil fuels in the ground is one of them. Now, look, a lot of people often say, what's the point of the UK striking out and investing more in renewable energy when the rest of the world is not doing so? Well, that's not the case. China, is getting 50% of its energy from renewables now, and they've made significant inroads. About 50% of their vehicles are electric. They're really leading the way in this transition because they know that's where we've got to go. And they will, of course, profit from it in the future. So when we, scrapped all of the wind turbine production facilities in the UK, we were basically doing ourselves out of business because we will have to invest in those wind turbines. And as you might have heard yesterday, Ed Miliband, who's trying his very best to do a very difficult job, given the shortages of funding that you're talking about, has signed us up for an exciting wind project project in the North Sea where energy will be supplied to a number of nations, and energy security for the UK will be assured. We shouldn't be at the mercy of a form of energy which we can't control the pricing of, which means that people have to choose between warming their house or cooking, which is being run by a country whose supply we can't trust.
I mean, you're absolutely right. The advances that China's made on solar in particular, but also wind, has been astonishing. Of course, they do still have an awful lot of coal, which is much dirtier than gas, to pick up the slack and allow them to have very cheap energy prices during the transition. Who knows how long the coal will be a big makeup of their energy mix as it is now. I think the other point some might push on for the UK situation is that we have made great advances in our overall carbon emissions over the last 20, 30 years. I think that's a fairly indisputable fact. Obviously, we're a relatively small nation when it comes to total emissions. But I think the key point they would pair with that is our electricity prices are incredibly high. So I guess the question is, do you need, some would say, arbitrary short-term targets when the general progress over time has been pretty good, if it's creating very high electricity prices in the short term, which, you know, has other consequences like killing off various parts of industry. Do you accept that pushback or
Yeah,
or
well,
not?
look, no one's disputing that we need a transition here, a just transition. There are many people involved in certainly in the UK, in the oil and gas industry. But what we've always asked for is a just transition away from that as rapidly as possible. And that means investing in those industries to retrain those people and set them up. But look, when you talk about high, fuel prices, look at the gastronomic profits being made by the fossil fuel giants. They're making record profits on, of billions and billions of pounds. And in my world, the world of the environmentalists, we have a saying that the polluter should pay. So the cost of that transition should be forked out by those who are making the money from it. And there's no ambiguity about that. But look, we're having a discussion about, whether we do this, whether we do that. We really aren't in a position to have those sorts of discussions. Our future as a species on this planet, our health and happiness and security going forward are very much dependent on the fact that we need to make changes. And what we need is, rather than blind leadership, which are leading us to hell in a handcart, we need some bold, brave leadership in order to implement those changes. You mentioned China. Their investment in solar is going to pay dividends for them because they'll be selling those solar panels to everyone all over the world when that transition is made. And I would suggest at this point that this is a time for significant investment in those industries, generating jobs, generating economic growth, but so that we too could be part of making sure that we don't only get the security, but we do have the opportunities. We've seized those opportunities to move forward into a healthier and happier world. But at the moment, the geopolitical insecurities that we see and the things which are constantly in the news, Venezuela, Greenland, Iran, America, so on and so forth. I hate to say this because of the gravity of those situations and the tragedies that are unfolding in some of those places, but these are a side issue when it comes to the survival of our species on this planet. And it's distraction which is keeping us away from dealing with the issue of assuring our future health.
I just wanted to jump in because I did have one final question that I wanted to ask. I think often when we talk about these environmental issues, we talk about it in quite abstract terms, like degrees of temperatures here, what's happening in countries that feel a very, very long away from us, like the Arctic or whatever. And I just want to talk to you as an environmentalist and someone who's very, very in tune with the United Kingdom and the wildlife here and the landscape here. What kind of changes are we seeing right here in our own country?
Well, Sophie, I think you've really hit the nail on the head, and that is that the sort of intangible aspects of climate breakdown and biodiversity loss, the damage that's being done to global ecosystems, is not something that we feel and see every day at this point in the UK. And again, tragically, in many parts of the world, that impact is being felt. But look, you can go to a supermarket now and see reflections in food prices on account of the impact of climate, not only in the UK and other parts of the world. If it were light, I would look out into my garden and see that about a third of it is underwater due to the extreme rain that we've had. And yesterday, when I was out walking and it wasn't pouring with rain, there were birds singing in January, which when I was a child, I wouldn't hear singing until February, maybe March. So for me, as someone who, as you point out, has probably got my finger on the pulse of that natural environment outside, those changes are daily. And I think, again, if you were to ask a farmer in the UK about the changes that they were feeling, they would say, well, we've been through extreme periods of wet, we've had droughts, and that is impinging on their capacity to produce food properly. So climate change, unlike football, is coming home to the UK, and we will very shortly begin to feel it quite hard. And it will be even more miserable than those desperate penalty shootouts that we lost.
I love it. Thank you very much. I can't believe you
want to bring people along with you with the argument. Don't sour our hopes for the World Cup.
It's been absolutely fascinating to talk. Thank you so much for coming on the programme this morning. Thank you.
Now, in the onslaught of international news at the start of the year, the experience people in Ukraine has been going through has somewhat been missing out on the headlines. Well, in the middle of winter there, of course, people are in freezing temperatures, often without heating.
And look, it's been more than 2 weeks since Russia totally obliterated the country's power grid, and that's had a huge impact on people who are struggling to cope without electricity. And obviously the constant threat of more attacks as well means many just have to stay exactly where they are.
Our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, has spoken to people at a block of flats in Kiev.
This is just one apartment block in one city in Ukraine. But its residents tell a much wider story of survival as Russia turns their homes into a different kind of front line. Tatiana lives on the 9th floor. She tells us she takes slow breaths to ease the strain on her heart. There's been no heating here for more than 2 weeks, and power cuts mean the lifts rarely work.
Cold. It's very cold. I walk around shivering, especially in the mornings. I wake up and it's awful. Everything is icy. I turn on the oven and just stand there warming myself. What else can I do? That's life.
A life that was hard enough with the country at war. But Russia is targeting power stations, leaving more than 1 million people without energy in the middle of winter, with temperatures as low as -20. Daria offers her son words of encouragement on what must feel like an endless climb. He's only 2, she's 5 months pregnant, and their apartment is on the 16th floor. From her window, she shows us a nearby building here in Kyiv that was hit in a strike on the 9th of January. This is what she saw. Since then, the heating hasn't worked, the electricity is patchy and the water's unreliable, so they've temporarily moved out.
With a child, it's simply impossible to stay in the apartment all the time. We came yesterday and stayed for just 2 or 3 hours, and I froze so much that my throat started to hurt.
We look for people who've chosen to stay or have nowhere else to go.
We have been here from the very beginning. We went through all the hardest time here, the explosions, everything.
Yeva asks us to follow her.
How many pairs of socks?
1, 2, 3, and boots. But at home, I put 2 more pairs on top. It is extremely cold.
She wants to show us how burst pipes have left patches of sheer ice on the floor.
I think exhaustion is the hardest part. Every day you have to fight, you have to survive. You're not really living, days just blur into one another. There is no Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday anymore. It is just one continuous day of survival.
But they're not struggling alone. The fit fetch food for the less mobile, while the practical try to fix the heating. Savelard explains how.
The emergency crew tried to do it. They warmed the pipes on the second floor, moved up to the third, and while they were heating there, everything below froze again. It was completely pointless. But when many people work at the same time, heating everything in sequence, you get results.
We find the professionals battling to unfreeze the very arteries of the building that deliver its water and warmth. Dangerous work, but this is the reality of Ukraine's energy emergency. And in the gloom of the 10th floor, one woman is sounding desperate.
Every single day, your emotional state deteriorates more and more. This feels like an enormous challenge, and everyone is at their breaking point.
Back on the 9th floor, though, there's no sign of Tatiana breaking.
Russia has brought the front line into your home by attacking the power stations. Do you feel like you will give up, or do you want to just keep on fighting?
No, we will never surrender. Never. No. They will not defeat us. We will fight till the very end. We hate them so much. Such hatred for all these Russians. Honestly, we wish them only death.
Evidence that in war, not every fighter wears a uniform. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, Kyiv.
More from Deborah to come later this week. Now let's have a look at the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Storm Chandra will bring a risk of disruption from wind, rain and snow today. Amber warnings have been issued for wind and rain, finally expiring at 9 p.m. There's a smorgasbord of yellow warnings too.
What a great name.
I love that.
Great word.
That is, someone's been watching the budget coverage. It's wet and windy with snow on northern hills and coastal gales severe around the Irish Sea, but Scotland looks relatively dry. The far southwest is turning dry too. It'll stay windy this morning with severe coastal gales possible in the north and the west. Ireland, Northern Ireland and southwestern Britain will see rain clearing to sunny spells and blustery showers.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Coming up on Holocaust Memorial Day, we've got an interview that I urge you to take a moment and watch. It's from a survivor. She was a child at the time. We'll have her remarkable story coming up next.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. What you see a lot of here are military machines, soldiers, devastation and destruction. What you see very little of are the locals, the Gazans, the people who used to live here, the ghosts of this town. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered. You have the black flag, you have the yellow flag, people were kidnapped.
Inside this convoy, prisoners released by Israel in exchange for their hostages. The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists. But here, the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners. There were tears and there was defiance. This land has been farmed for hundreds of years, but now it's a scene of conflict. Israeli settlers have come to this area to seize land.
They've taken the land that I inherited from my father, and my father inherited from his father.
What would happen if you went over?
Oh, we'll be shot.
This is a place where the past is cherished, but the future is feared. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Sky News. Get the full story first.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Hello again. Now, as the years pass, many of the survivors of the Holocaust are no longer here to share their stories, and the memories of those who lived through the horror of this time can sometimes feel lost or at danger of being lost. So on this Holocaust Memorial Day, the world will remember those stories and also the millions of Jewish people who were murdered by the Nazis. I spoke to Janine. She was just a child when she hid from the Gestapo as they captured and killed her father and her grandmother. This is her story.
Can you talk to me a little bit about when the war started?
Yes.
Do you remember it?
Well, I was 7 when the Russians
Of course,
came,
so slightly later.
But 9 when the Germans came, because it was 1941.
And what was the first kind of signs? Was it sort of anti-Semitism just starting, or was it like a sudden change?
Yes. To start with, they decided to round up Jewish men. They did it very progressively, not to frighten people. So they, they started taking them. One day, my mother, my brother and I, we were in our flat, and I heard the Gestapo screaming, and my father came running in. We lived on the 2nd floor. My father came running in, and he said, the Germans are after me, and my mother locked the door. And my father, in order to escape, jumped from our 2nd floor balcony on the 1st floor balcony and hid underneath. The Gestapo started banging at our door. My mother had to let them in. They didn't find my father, and they left.
That must have been terrifying.
That was exactly, it was my first experience of seeing the Nazis, really the Gestapo, and armed. And they looked very severe. And I became very frightened.
Yeah.
From then on, I was always frightened.
Yeah. And how did your parents react? What did they do then?
Well, what happened was, I asked my mother, why do they want my father? And my mother said, because we are Jewish. And I never sort of asked myself, because when one is a small child, one doesn't bother about wondering who one is. And in those days, children would play outside in the streets.
Yeah.
All the children together. And I remember being with other children, and I always wanted to be a nurse as a child. I was supposedly a nurse anyway. And so I became very frightened. My father actually came back from jumping when it was quiet. He was still alive, but he had broken his leg. So that was my first experience meeting the Nazis.
And you were then moved to a ghetto, is this right?
Well, not immediately.
What happened after that then?
After that, we were told to leave the flat because, you see, they wanted to take over all the flats and houses, all the possessions of the Jews. So we were told to leave, to take a suitcase. And we were given a room because the ghetto was not yet ready. So meanwhile, we were given a little room in a small house for my parents, my brother and me. And my grandmother, who used to take care of me, also came. She slept in the corridor. And I had an aunt who actually survived. She came and she said, hide when you hear the Gestapo. So my parents dug a hole under the wardrobe, and when we heard the Gestapo, my mother, my brother and I, we hid in that hole under the wardrobe. But there was no room for my father and my grandmother, and they hid in the loft. I don't know what happened to my grandmother, because I remember hearing her screaming. They might have pushed her down the ladder, and they took them away. And when it was quiet, we came out of the hole. And I asked my mother, what happened to my father and my grandmother? My mother said they were shot. You see, they were shooting the Jews. Then, before sending them to camps, they were shooting thousands of them.
So you and your mum and your brother were hiding in a tiny hole under the wardrobe?
Yes.
And you could hear?
Yes, yes, yes.
Because
it's just the most extraordinary story, and we'll play a little bit more of the interview with Janine, where she talks about what happened after that moment, about what happened to her brother in particular, who was just 7 when he was killed by the Nazis. We'll hear more from Janine in the next hour.
We certainly will. We're also going to hear from Sir Sajid Javid, who's, of course, the chair of the Holocaust Memorial Trust. Both of those conversations coming up near the top of the next hour, this Holocaust Memorial Day. Lots more still to come as well, including more coverage of the government's announcement just this morning on ground rents as well. We'll explain what that means. We'll be right back after this short break.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
Sophie and Wilf, good morning from both of us. Lots to get to today.
The public face of Trump's ICE campaign in Minneapolis is leaving the city days after another American citizen was shot dead by officers.
Rebellion grows over the decision to block Andy Burnham standing as an MP as the Labour Party worries about losing the by-election entirely.
Relief for millions of leaseholders as the government announces a major shake-up of the system, including a cap on ground rent.
Also, today is Holocaust Memorial Day, and we're going to be hearing the stories of survivors and also remembering the people who were murdered, including 6 million Jews.
Plus, how AI and robotic technology are changing the future of lung cancer detection. We'll speak to Dame Esther Ranson about the NHS pilot.
Good morning. Thanks for being with us today. The top immigration official in Minneapolis is expected to leave the city in what lots of people are seeing as an attempt by President Trump to de-escalate tensions and potentially even change tack after another US citizen was killed over the weekend.
Gregory Bovino has become the face of the Trump administration's ICE operation in Minneapolis. He's going back to his old job on the border, and a different member of Trump's team will lead immigration efforts there in Minneapolis. And it will be welcome news there, where tensions are still very high. Martha Kellner was there and sent this report.
On this street in suburban Minneapolis, everyone is on alert. They believe this car has ICE immigration agents inside. They're doing what they can to disrupt. In Washington, President Trump is trying to de-escalate this situation, which has become politically poisonous. But tensions remain high.
You think that there's ICE agents inside this car?
I think so. I mean, that's what the neighborhood networks are saying.
President Trump has said that he's looking at reducing the number of ICE agents in this city.
No, they need to get out, all of them, every single one.
What is it doing to this place?
It's creating this suspicion of, like, every car that goes by, everybody watches as it goes by because you don't know.
They have just shot a man.
They shot that guy.
I know.
This video shows the aftermath of the killing of Alex Pretty. A doctor who was nearby rushed to this scene. He says he was initially blocked by immigration agents from providing medical care to Pretty. In court documents, the doctor said officers appeared to be focused on counting the victim's bullet wounds instead of performing CPR. Pretty was initially cast by the Trump administration as a domestic terrorist intent on a massacre, despite there being no evidence of that. But the White House is now striking a softer tone. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying President Trump will work alongside Minnesota's Democratic governor.
It is President Trump's hope and wish and demand for the resistance and chaos to end today. That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota.
Trump is now sending border czar Tom Homan to handle immigration enforcement in Minneapolis. Gregory Bovino, who had been leading the crackdown here, has been stripped of his role as Border Patrol commander. He was the public face of this immigration blitz that outraged many with aggressive tactics and his handling of Pretty's shooting. All over Minneapolis, there are quiet and steely acts of resistance. On the roadside in -23 degrees, a nurse is performing her own.
You know, they disarmed him and then shot him 10 times. And man, if that doesn't wake up every person in America, I can't I can't see how anybody could feasibly or reasonably support the Trump administration or be comfortable with what's happening here in Minnesota.
Do you think Minnesota has been very deliberately targeted by President Trump?
There's an example being made out of us. We're a functioning welfare state. We take care of our people, and we're still a donor state. We vote blue. I think Donald Trump and his administration thought that it would be easy to walk into Minneapolis and rile people up.
Inside, get the lettuce inside.
Outside a church nearby, people are collecting and organising aid boxes. It's a scene more common to a disaster zone. Food and hygiene supplies ready to be delivered to members of the immigrant community.
It doesn't make sense not to help them. There are people that, are in process, they're afraid to go out, but there are people that are already legal citizens that are afraid to go out. So I think we need to help them. This place has been great.
Thank you.
Just throw everything on top. I got the ciphers.
People here are fighting against the crackdown on migrants in so many ways. And maybe the climb down in Washington suggests it's working. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Minneapolis.
And I think as we try and work out the extent to which the president is pivoting here, everyone's now watching what happens specifically to Bovino's boss. That's the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem. And is she just sort of quietly silenced for the next week or two, or just something more significant happens such that he kind of wants to find a full person for all of this, to try and draw a line under it and mark a proper change of tune? Or is it just window dressing? And I think that's what people are watching for the next couple of days.
Yeah, and also, if the change of personnel means a change in policy. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who says he's got things wrong, but a change of tack would be pretty interesting.
Yeah. Now, to politics here, and another week of breakneck pace of news. More than 50 MPs have signed a letter criticising the Prime Minister over the decision to block Andy Burnham from standing as an MP. They're now worried Labour is going to lose the by-election in Gorton and Denton.
We can talk now to Mari, who's here to chat things through with us. So you've been talking to some of these grumpy MPs, right? And we can now say that more than 50 have signed this letter. At what point does it become a problem?
Exactly. So I think there are two issues here. The first is the number, of course. If that number continues to rise, if it gets to 60, 70, 80, etc., then you start to get a level of discontent in the party that number 10 will start to really wake up to. The second, of course, is who are on that list. So what kind of MPs are we talking about? Now, we know the number, we don't know the names. And so if it's the usual suspects, number 10 will be less concerned. If it is some MPs that perhaps might raise an eyebrow, that might start to make them think twice about how they've handled this and whether the messaging around the blocking of Andy Burnham standing in that by-election was really actually on the nose or perhaps slightly misjudged. I've been speaking to several MPs this morning. Some have signed it, some haven't. They are all in agreement, really, that the PM is in a terrible situation, whichever way you look at it, whether he should have or shouldn't have blocked Andy Burnham. They're divided on that, but they're kind of united on the fact that Starmer's days appear to be numbered. Now, this is obviously British politics, anything can happen, but the fact that the tone in the party, from what I'm feeling this morning, is really quite down and glum. And I think the difficulty is when you have so many MPs so frustrated with you. You've got Angela Rayner starting to get a bit more vocal now compared to when she was in the autumn, for instance. Even people giving me names like Darren Jones as a possible underdog to replace Keir Starmer. I mean, people are... The speculation is just kind of going wild this morning.
Can I just clarify what this letter means? Because this is just a sort of letter... We're dissatisfied with the decision. But it's not the same, because we've been talking about this the last couple of days. If there was to be a challenge in the months ahead, and we talk about that 80 MP number, 20% of the Parliamentary Labour Party. That's not what this is. We're not counting down the numbers.
No, exactly that. This is a letter to try and show the PM how upset they are, and they think that strength in numbers will show that actually they're not alone, and this is, a widespread issue in the party. But it's not the same, as you say, of those letters where you would write and basically say, write a letter of no confidence in the PM, I want him out. It's not the same thing. But doesn't mean it might not lead to one from another.
And I think you're totally right what you're saying about even people who are split on the Burnham decision itself and the tactics there. Like, I'm the same, my phone is just, honestly, it's full of Labour MPs who are feeling so gloomy about this. I guess one thing that might pick them up this morning, the government will be hoping, is this announcement on leaseholds, right? Because it does feel like this is something that's been ripe for reform for an awfully long time. And finally, we've got a bit of detail.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of this feudal system that has kind of dogged different governments. Tories said they were going to do things about it, didn't deliver all the promises that they said they would. Michael Gove talked about how he regretted that, for instance. And this is a manifesto pledge for the Labour Party. So this is actually, in a way, as you were saying, perhaps going to give a little boost to these Labour MPs who are feeling a bit gloomy this morning, because this is kind of red meat to Labour MPs who feel this is the kind of Labour things they should be doing. So the government has announced that from 2028 they're going to be capping ground rent at £250 a year. The average ground rent is over £300, so it will give people a saving. And then after 40 years, ground rent will then go down to a peppercorn, so basically a tiny little bit, nothing major. They're also going to ban new leasehold flats. I know you were talking to Steve Reed, the Housing Secretary, about that earlier. And what they're saying is this is kind of overhauling a dysfunctional system that was created for, you know, a bygone era, and that actually it's punishing people who might want to either get on the housing ladder because they're paying so much more in ground rent than they really should be. They're not paying for a service, like service charge. But also what they're saying is some people are trapped in properties where if the ground rent is really high, it makes it hard for them to sell that property, then they can't either upsize, downsize, or just sell the house because they fancy it. And that traps it and therefore could potentially give a bit more mobility in the housing market.
Yeah, it's such a crazy system. So it's like you're kind of caught between owning a house and not owning a house. It's like, and then you've got no control over it. You have to pay a load of money for things, but you have no say in over
you own the air, but not the ground.
Should be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great. That's what everyone wanted. The housing dream.
Mara, great stuff. Thanks so much. Now, one of the things we'll be talking about a lot in the next few days is the Prime Minister's trip to China. He leaves for Beijing tonight, but just as he goes, there are new reports this morning about China hacking the phones of senior officials in Number 10 between 2021 and 2024.
So we did try and get some answers on this from the government this morning. They're obviously limited in what they can say, but still interesting to hear what Steve Reed, the Housing Secretary, did tell us. We've got these reports on hacking. We've said yes to this mega embassy. Keir Starmer's out there in China. He's going to China. Are we a bit naive about the risk that China poses?
No. Fully alive to what the risks may be, not just from China, but from any foreign source that it might come from. Fully alive to that. China is also the second biggest economy on the planet. Over 370,000 jobs in the UK depend on trade with China. It's quite right we should do what we need to trade with China, but national security will always override all other concerns. That is precisely as it should be.
I think it's such an interesting reminder of the situation with China. I mean, of course, we have to trade with them, and I think the Prime Minister going there should also be seen in the context of Mark Carney just went there. And by the way, President Trump, who's, you know, obviously pretty anti-China, is going himself in April. So I think the idea or the framing of it that anyone says, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, I think would make us the outlier as opposed to the kind of front runner on this. I do think with this context, you know, this is a partner that does aim to kind of seek information by nefarious means, and you've got to be aware of that. I remember going to China a couple of times when I was still in finance, and even back in 2014 time, you were told back then, don't take your personal phone, take a burner, because they'll hack everything when you're there, which is just like, you know, something to be aware of. It's a different approach.
That's a good point about Donald Trump's trip as well, definitely. Now, there's a really interesting new study. It's a big study as well. It's about the impact of the menopause, because researchers say that the changes in the brain that you go through when you have the menopause are actually similar to those seen in Alzheimer's. It's a very large survey. It was run by the Cambridge University. They found that the loss of grey matter might partly explain why women are at greater risk of dementia than men. Oliver's here with all the details. Big survey, this.
Very big survey. 125,000 women had their data analysed, and then 11,000 MRI brain scans were also analysed. And what they found is that the same parts of the brain that usually are affected by Alzheimer's are also affected in the menopause. It includes the hippocampus, which relates to learning and memory. It also relates to another part of the brain that leads to attention and the sort of regulation of emotion. All of these things, of course, is what happens when you go through Alzheimer's disease. And the Alzheimer's Society says 2/3 of women in the UK represent all of the patients that have Alzheimer's. It's only 1/3 of patients that are men. And so they think potentially then the changes that come about with the menopause could then be linked to what happens with these increased cases of Alzheimer's in women, and potentially that is the link.
I'm so struck by this. I mean, firstly, I didn't actually realise that the split was so big. 2/3 of Alzheimer's are women, and I guess what lots of people listening to this programme might be interested in is if they start to understand the link, does that then mean they might be able to understand how to break the link, how to stop it?
Well, that's always the aim of sort of science and research, and trying to find out what those connections are to then how to break those connections and come up with new treatments. The treatments that are currently around, though, include hormone replacement therapy. Now, this isn't something that works for everybody, and in the UK, only 15% of women take these tablets to stop some of those quite harsh symptoms that you get when you have the menopause, including hot flushes, memory loss, brain fog, disrupted sleeping. All those types of things can really have an impact on women's lives. And so what the researchers also looked at was if you take those HRT pills, whether it would then stop the changes in the grey matter, but they found that actually it didn't. So a lot of things that they can look at with this data, and because it's such a huge cohort, it makes it quite a strong and robust study as opposed to some of those other studies where you only get 2,000 or 3,000 people in the sample size.
Absolutely fascinating stuff, it really is. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Now, it's been a busy start to the year, of course. We haven't spoken much about Ukraine in the past few weeks, but it's middle of winter there and people are living in freezing temperatures, often without heating.
Now, it's been more than 2 weeks since Russia totally obliterated the country's power grid, which obviously has a huge impact on energy, heating, lighting, the whole lot, and many people, of course, struggling to cope.
Here is our Defence and Security Editor, Deborah Haynes.
This is just one apartment block in one city in Ukraine. But its residents tell a much wider story of survival as Russia turns their homes into a different kind of frontline. Tatiana lives on the 9th floor. She tells us she takes slow breaths to ease the strain on her heart. There's been no heating here for more than 2 weeks, and power cuts mean the lifts rarely work.
Cold. It's very cold. I walk around shivering, especially in the mornings. I wake up and it's awful. Everything is icy. I turn on the oven and just stand there warming myself. What else can I do? That's life.
A life that was hard enough with the country at war. But Russia is targeting power stations, leaving more than 1 million people without energy in the middle of winter, with temperatures as low as -20. Daria offers her son words of encouragement on what must feel like an endless climb. He's only 2, she's 5 months pregnant, and their apartment is on the 16th floor. From her window, she shows us a nearby building here in Kyiv that was hit in a strike on the 9th of January. This is what she saw. Since then, the heating hasn't worked, the electricity is patchy, and the water's unreliable, so they've temporarily moved out.
With a child, it's simply impossible to stay in the apartment all the time. We came yesterday and stayed for just 2 or 3 hours, and I froze so much that my throat started to hurt.
We look for people who've chosen to stay or have nowhere else to go.
We have been here from the very beginning. We went through all the hardest time here, the explosions, everything.
Yeva asks us to follow her.
How many pairs of socks? 1, 2, 3, and boots. But at home, I put 2 more pairs on top. It is extremely cold.
She wants to show us how burst pipes have left patches of sheer ice on the floor.
I think exhaustion is the hardest part. Every day you have to fight, you have to survive. You're not really living, days just blur into one another. There is no Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday anymore. It is just one continuous day of survival.
More from Ukraine and from Deborah to come later this week. Now, events will take place across the world today to mark Holocaust Memorial Day, marking 81 years since Auschwitz was liberated. Landmarks across the UK will be lit up in purple to remember the lives lost. Joining us is Sir Sajid Javid, who is the chair of Holocaust Memorial Day Trust. Sir Sajid, very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
What does this day today mean to you?
Well, 27th of January, every year, Holocaust Memorial Day, as you said. And today it's really about, I'd say, about two big things. One is, of course, commemoration. You're remembering the 6 million Jewish men, women and children that were murdered and countless others by the Nazis. But also it's about education. And that's just as important. So not just about remembering the dead, and of course that's important, but really about looking ahead and educating young people, people of all ages, about prejudice in all its forms. Anti-Semitism, of course, but prejudice in all its forms. Sadly, of course, it still exists today. Anti-Semitism in particular, we've seen in the last year, has been on the rise, near all-time highs. We saw that the terrible murder that the Jewish community is still coming to terms with, Heaton Park Synagogue last year, the murders in Australia at Bondi Beach. So it's about that as well, about educating people. And we do that through the national ceremony, through ceremonies across the country. We've already had some in the last couple of days in Cardiff, in Edinburgh, in Belfast, and we'll be building on that today.
I want to speak about anti-Semitism specifically in a moment, but just on the Holocaust itself, I mean, it seems sort of absurd to have to say this, but do we need education on that itself as well, as not so much just that more time passes, but the sort of misinformation that you do see in pockets, thankfully only, that's out there today about it all?
Yes, we do. I mean, I think it's fair, it's the most atrocious act that humanity has ever engaged in. As I said, the murder of 6 million Jewish men, women and children perished. And we do need reminding of that, because if you look today at some of the sort of information that's being shared, or sort of the fake news around the Holocaust, there's Holocaust denial, there's Holocaust distortion and inversion. You know, just last week, I was shocked, but I was shocked that other people, so many others weren't shocked, that to see on the X platform a video of Andrew Tate, this guy called Nick Fuentes in the US. They have millions of followers singing Heil Hitler songs, doing Nazi salutes, dancing to that song, actually dancing to it in a nightclub. This is what's going on today, and young people especially are watching this. And I think we all have a duty to remind people of what happened 80 or more years ago. But also that when you look at what happened in Cambodia, in Rwanda, that this kind of hate based on race, it still continues in our world. And whether it's anti-Semitism or any other kind of prejudice, I think we all have a responsibility to fight it.
You speak very bravely and openly in your new book that comes out next week, The Colour of Home, about the racism you've experienced in your life, particularly as a youngster. You said earlier that anti-Semitism was on the rise. Do you think it's more on the rise than other forms of prejudice and racism? Is it silly to get into those differences, or is it important to get into those different types of prejudice?
Well, anti-Semitism is absolutely on the rise in the UK, and I think it is measured by, in terms of the statistics the police have in terms of hate crimes, and I think it's almost at an all-time high. But also anti-Muslim hatred has been on the rise as well. So many types of prejudice, sadly, on the rise. And
why do you think it is?
Sadly, I just think there's just a lot more division and conflict around. I think social media is playing a part in that. I think in today's world, it's unfortunate, it's easier to share false narratives, fake news, to sort of wind people up against the other. And I think all of this then makes our job at the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust even more important, because anchored in the Holocaust itself, the murder of 6 million Jewish men, women and children, it allows us to remind people of what happened decades ago, but that also, when this kind of hatred happens, it doesn't start with violence. It often starts with words or ideas, and then it can lead to the most atrocious violence. And we need to remind people, each other, of that, but also educate the young. Also, if I may, I just add the survivors of the Holocaust. Sadly, the number is dwindling, and we will have survivors today at the ceremony, the national ceremony. Their Majesties will be meeting survivors today at Buckingham Palace as well. But it's important to hear their stories, to record their stories. Because I think when people hear directly from survivors, it's almost like you become a witness yourself to what they went through, and you can pass that on to your own children.
What views do you have when you see what's happening in Minneapolis?
I don't like it. Of course, I don't like it. There's just too much division, and I don't. Today, I don't want to try and get into sort of the political arguments around that. But today is a day for me to try and bring politicians. It doesn't matter whether we're talking in the US or in Britain. And actually, one thing I am pleased about through my experience in politics is that certainly when it comes to Holocaust Memorial Day and the importance of this day, it doesn't matter what political party you represent. I think it brings most politicians together. And today at the national ceremony, we'll have members of the government, we'll have leader of the opposition and others. And it's really good to bring people together. But I want that to continue. I don't want it just to be a day of people marking that, but actually taking it forward.
If we can, just moving on quickly to other topics and politics here, we're watching this slew of people moving from your old party, to Reform. When is your big announcement to join Reform?
Well, I think you'll be waiting a very long time because that's not going to happen.
You get my joke, though, on this. I mean, is it starting to be more than you would expect of your former colleagues going to Reform? Are you surprised every day you see a new announcement?
Look, if you allow me, what I would say is this. There'll be plenty of opportunity that you and your colleagues will have to ask me about what's going on in the Westminster bubble. But for me, today is not that day. I really want to focus on bringing politicians together. And again, what I will say, it doesn't, I know plenty of, they could be Reform politicians, Conservative politicians, Labour politicians, but the thing today that will bring them together is Holocaust Memorial Day.
I think that's fair enough, and we thank you for joining us, Sir Sajid, today, of all days in particular.
Thank you very much.
Sir Sajid Javid, the chair of the Holocaust Memorial Day there, and more to come from Sophie's interview later as well. Now, when we come back, we're going to be talking more about the latest in the US, Minneapolis, and we'll be talking to Sir Kim Darroch about all things President Trump. We'll be right back.
the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'll take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter. Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started. We're covering what's going on in Minneapolis this morning, where, of course, 2 US citizens have been shot and killed by so-called ICE agents, immigration agents there. And we're analysing whether a shift in tone has happened from Donald Trump, because the guy who in many ways has been seen as the public face of those ICE operations has lost his job. He's moved.
Yeah, that's Greg Bovino, and he's being replaced by Tom Homan, who is another hardline immigration member of Trump's administration, but he's at least not been the face of things over the last couple of weeks. And I think a lot of people also watching closely what President Trump does as it regards to Kristi Noem, who's the head of Homeland Security. Is it just that these people have quietly shuffled into other roles, or more formally have steps taken against them? And I guess that will be revealing in the days ahead.
Yeah, and also whether this is, I guess, a precursor to a wider change in policy and tactics in one of the most controversial things, for all the obvious reasons, that Donald Trump has done in his presidency.
Let's talk a little bit more detail about all of this. Lord Darroch joins us now, the former ambassador to the United States during President Trump's first term. Very good morning to you, Lord Darroch.
Good morning.
Good to see you. So what is your assessment, firstly, not that this is what matters most of all, how this is all played for President Trump over the last month? Is this an issue that he's looking at with the sort of midterms in mind? What do you think?
The Minneapolis shootings. It was a terrible-looking event. If you looked at those videos, they looked almost like public executions. And I'm not surprised they've proved so divisive in America. And both Trump and Kristi Noem, the Interior Secretary, came out strongly in support of what the police has done. It feels now, with the removal of Bovino, who, by the way, was part of the problem because his rhetoric in defence of what ICE agents has done was really inflammatory, it looks like he is backing down a bit. And he's put Homan, who is someone he clearly trusts, in charge of it. So he's kind of, I think, reflected where I suspect the majority of public opinion has been in America, which is that this shouldn't have been happening in this way.
Do you think that there'll be further steps in that direction? And what would you be watching for from here as to whether there's a meaningful shift from him?
Well, what ICE agents are doing is really looks very brutal. They're going into schools, they're going into retail centres, they are taking people off the street, they're taking people out of their homes. And that has to be a very divisive step. There's a lot of... It's what he promised he would do in the campaign for the election. He's following through with that. A lot of people are being expelled. But he's way down on the opinion polls. He's down about 42, 43%. All the polls suggest he's going to lose the House in the midterms. Even the Senate sometimes, on extreme measures, looks at risk. That would be a big loss for him, because once you lose one of the houses of Congress, you basically can't spend any money without doing a deal with the Democrats. So I guess he may be starting to look towards the midterms and seeing if he can pull back some of those people who've left him since the election.
What's your assessment of those members of Congress in his own party in the start of this year? I mean, whether it's this particular issue or Greenland, have we started to see a few more Republicans stand up and speak out against them?
Well, I wonder if what the Europeans have been doing, which is to talk strongly to him in private while staying pretty quiet in public, is also what members of the Republican Party in Congress are doing, because they've looked astonishingly quiet and passive while some pretty extraordinary stuff has been going on, threats against and threats of military action against allies, bullying on the allies, this kind of thing. But Trump has backed down a bit now in Minneapolis, and of course he backed down on Greenland a bit. Some of that, I think, with Greenland was down to European position, European pressure. But I wouldn't put it all down to the Europeans. I suspect there are some pretty tough messages coming in private from senior members of Congress, some of those figures in the Senate like Lindsey Graham that he really relies on for advice.
Obviously, some people have raised the question whether Greenland was a distraction from other things, an intentional distraction. I guess whether that's the case or not is not so much my question, but what do you expect to happen next in Iran, where clearly he is sending military assets to the region? Do you expect something significant to happen?
I don't think he's decided on that yet. He's doing this as a preemptive move, so he's got some weaponry in place in case he does decide to do stuff. He's made threats about what he will do to the regime, to the IRGC, if the kind of killings that we've seen in Iran start happening again or continue. I just don't think he's decided, but it's basically bringing the equipment into place in case he wants to carry out the threat. And look, he feels he's done pretty well with Iran over the course of this presidency, and I think he wants to keep the pressure up on them.
Prime Minister's off to China this evening. How careful does he have to be about striking a deep friendship there?
That visit will be watched very closely in Washington. They saw what Mark Carney did in Beijing a couple of weeks ago, and they didn't like it. So they'll be looking very carefully at how Keir Starmer handles his visit. He's got to walk a tightrope here. I don't think you'll see any talk of new golden eras, but it is an important relationship for us. I mean, this is 1.5 billion people. China does lots of things we don't like theft of intellectual property, their behaviour on Hong Kong, their behaviour on human rights, their threats to Taiwan. But, they're not an enemy. We don't define them as an enemy. And they take a big chunk of British exports, 7 or 8% of our total exports. So it's an important relationship. And Keir Starmer has to walk a tightrope, strike a balance between maintaining and maybe even strengthening the economic and commercial relationship, but not doing stuff that will enrage Washington, though we can't let Washington define the terms of this relationship. It's too important to us.
Just finally, President Trump is due to go to Beijing himself.
Exactly.
So to what extent is Trump's rhetoric different from the direction of travel towards China?
Well, he's always said and claimed, not usually reciprocated, that he has this great relationship with President Xi. On the other hand, there is no question but the national security establishment on both sides of the aisle in America see China as the existential challenge for the 21st century. So, again, he has to tread a line here. I think he will want the relationship to look good. He would like to sort out the sort of semi-trade war that is going on all these tariffs. But how much progress he makes, the Chinese are playing quite tough with him on all this. The Chinese are also making overtures to the rest of the world, saying they're now the defenders of the rules-based international system. So I think it's tricky for Trump, this meeting.
Tricky for Trump, tricky for Starmer in the next few days. Lord Darragh, great to see you as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Potentially really important health story to bring you now, because patients with suspected lung cancer could be diagnosed or also have the disease ruled out faster under a new NHS pilot that combines artificial intelligence with existing technology.
Officials have hailed the project as a glimpse of the future of cancer detection.
Well, Dame Esther Ranson, who was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2023, joins us now to talk more about this. Thank you so much for being with us. Esther, you're on the phone to us, obviously. Just talk us through the latest development in this. It sounds quite exciting.
Yes, it does. I think it's a very good idea to be able to detect cancer early if you can treat it. I mean, my uncle was a chest consultant who never, ever told any of his cancer patients they were suffering from cancer because it's really a very strange diagnosis. It leaves you worrying about exactly what is happening in your own body. And as at the moment I'm not being treated, I fully understand what it's like if they can't treat you. But this is what on the basis that they can treat you early and they can stop it spreading and they can make a difference to your life expectancy. So I welcome it, of course, for other people, of course, yes.
Esther, it's so great to have you with us. I guess key in what you're saying is how we all understand the word treat. Do you think it's important for that word to mean cure to some extent?
Well, delay will do. I mean, my own cancer has been delayed by 3 years. It's this Thursday, it's a third anniversary from my diagnosis. So I certainly didn't expect that. I certainly didn't expect to see last Christmas, which I did. So I think delay is welcome. But I'm used to the fact that I'm being told there is no such thing as a cure for what I've got. And I think we can't always hope for a complete cure.
Yeah, it's very moving, I'll have to say, to hear you, talking about your own diagnosis and the 3 years that you've had, the fact you didn't expect to see the last Christmas as well. How hopeful should others be that these kind of treatments with AI, with technology, might change the outlook for cancer patients in the future?
I think that's a wonderful hope, and I think it's likely to happen. I do worry a little bit about this announcement because it puts a top age at 75. I don't know quite why that is. 75 is the new 55. So I don't know why people like me at 85 have been ruled out completely on the grounds we're past it anyway and we should be grateful for what we got. But anyway, they might have a look at that. But I do think it's a very hopeful sign that things are really radically changing when it comes to the treatment and diagnosis of cancer.
Switching focus, if we may, I just wanted to ask for your latest view on the progress or lack thereof, potentially, of the assisted dying bill and whether your optimism there is slipping as various parliamentary measures and time kind of slips away.
Yes, it would never have happened in time for me anyway. So I've always been really fighting for future generations that they will have the choice if they are terminally ill. And I think the House of Lords is behaving very strangely because some lobby groups who would never find any amendment would be enough for them. I mean, some of the disability groups, some of the religious groups, which are not huge, but are very vocal, really are opposed to the whole concept and principle of anyone being asked for the right to choose a quick and pain-free death if life becomes intolerable for them. And I'm extremely sorry that they're filibustering and using every method they can to obstruct what the House of Commons has already passed and what the public is by a large majority in favour of, because it gives us the dignity of choice. We used to have it because GPs used to regard it as part of the way they treated terminally ill patients if they became very, if they were suffering acute pain or other indignities. Since Shipman, that has been taken away from GPs, and I think it's time that the House of Lords looked very carefully at their democratic duty. This is not the way we run things in this country. We don't get small lobby groups of minorities objecting in principle and therefore frustrating the democratic will of the public and the Commons.
Esther, thank you so much for being with us today. Really interesting to get your take, in particular, of course, on that new technology, and also to hear that you enjoyed another Christmas. You're doing well. It's good to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And sounding fantastic as well. Great to have her with us. Time for a look at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Storm Chandra will bring a risk of disruption from wind, rain and even some snow as well today. Amber warnings have been issued for wind and rain, finally expiring at 9 p.m, so we've got nearly a full day of it. There's also a smorgasbord of yellow warnings around as well. So it's wet and windy, snow on northern hills and coastal gales, severe around the Irish Sea, and Scotland looks relatively dry. But the far southwest is also turning drier as well. It's going to stay pretty windy this morning with some severe coastal gales possible in the north and the west. Northern Ireland and southwestern Britain will see rain clearing to sunny spells and blustery showers. But northern and eastern England will stay pretty wet. Southern and central Scotland will turn wet as well.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Coming up, we've got an interview with one of the survivors of the attacks that we saw in Nottingham. Worth sticking around to listen to what he has to say about the day that changed his life.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. What you see a lot of here are military machines, soldiers, devastation and destruction. What you see very little of are the locals, the Gazans, the people who used to live here, the ghosts of this town. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered. You have the black flag, you have the yellow flag. People were kidnapped.
Inside this convoy, prisoners released by Israel in exchange for their hostages. The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners. There were tears and there was defiance. This land has been farmed for hundreds of years, but now it's a scene of conflict. Israeli settlers have come to this area to seize land.
They've taken the land that I inherited from my father, and my father inherited from his father.
What would happen if you entered?
Oh, we'll be shot.
This is a place where the past is cherished, but the future is feared. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Sky News, get the full story first.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what? A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Welcome back. A survivor of the 2023 Nottingham attacks has told Sky News that more responsibility needs to be taken for failures in the lead-up to the incident. Wayne Burkett was among 3 people who survived when Valdo Calacane ploughed into them with a van.
Now, at that point, he'd already killed caretaker Ian Coates and also students Barnaby Webber and Grace Amelie Kamar, and there's been an awful lot of questions about the care that the killer received. He'd been under the care of Nottinghamshire's mental health services in the years leading up to the attack, and a report finding that failings there may have contributed to the tragedy that then happened.
Well, our communities correspondent Lisa Holland is here with us and was speaking to Mr. Burkett yesterday. Lisa, just remind us the setup of this and what kind of happened to Mr. Burkett himself.
So one of the victims who was stabbed that you mentioned there, Ian Coates, he was a school caretaker. He had a van. That van was taken by Valda Calacane and essentially tried to mow down 3 other people, including Wayne Burkitt. Now, speaking to Wayne Burkitt was really quite something, quite extraordinary, because it was a conversation which even a couple of years ago he wouldn't have been able to have had because his injuries were so serious at the time. I mean, I was chatting to him and he was saying that he didn't remember, he had no recollection of the incident, and he didn't really remember life beforehand. So the past 2.5 years has been essentially trying to rebuild his memory, learn how to do basic stuff again. And having got to the point where, I mean, we even weren't sure if we'd be able to talk to him on his own or whether he'd need his solicitor next to him, but in the end, he did fantastically. And that's a real milestone for him because he wants to speak, he wants his voice to be heard ahead of A, a meeting with the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, and B, a public inquiry, which is due to start at the end of February. This is what he had to say. How difficult has your life been since the attack?
It's been like being born again. I've had to learn to read, write, know what a ladybird is. Lots of things I've had to learn. How to talk to people, how to use a phone. Lots of things. It's like starting life again. Obviously, I've had brain problems, but now I'm seeing things more clearer, a bit more. I can talk to people, which I couldn't do before. And things are sinking into me now about, like this CQC what's just come out, and about the police. Before it never bothered me because I don't remember none of it. So, but now I think something needs to be done because somebody else is going to die soon, very soon.
Do you feel that you were failed by the mental health services in Nottinghamshire?
They have let us down, yeah. More money should be spent on it.
This is the mental health services. And how do you feel they let you down?
I let him out, let him escape. I'm saying someone's got to take the blame for this man coming out and killing them poor students and poor Ian Coates, and then trying to kill me and Sharon and Austin. It's just not. Someone's got to take the blame for it.
Gosh, it's quite something listening to him when he's talking about having to start his life again. And you talk there about the journey that he's been on, but the message there for the public inquiry from him when it comes to the mental health services, I mean, he's got a point to make.
Yeah, he and others clearly feel that there have been a lack of changes since this incident in which 3 people lost their lives, 3 others, their lives have changed forever. And also there have been, as his legal team say, multiple red flags along the way that not enough has been done. Now, the government says that it has listened, that there have been changes, for example, to the Mental Health Act. The local NHS Trust Foundation are saying as well that changes are being made. But the point about the public inquiry is that there will be lots of organisations there. It's not just the local NHS, also the Crown Prosecution Service, the police, the local council, lots of institutions. So for the first time, a full account will be pulled together, if you like, and that's what these people want, and they want more recommendations so that something like this doesn't happen again.
Lisa, great stuff. Thanks so much.
Thank you. There's an interesting story out today that we wanted to bring your attention to. So it's new research and it's suggesting that white kids from working class backgrounds are falling further behind at school compared to people, well, firstly, people from different classes, but also people from different races as well, black or Asian peers too.
The study from the UCL Institute of Education found that disadvantaged white pupils perform worse in exams when applying to selective universities than students from similar socio-economic backgrounds in other ethnic groups.
Yeah, it's so interesting because if you dig down into, and there's been loads of studies, I should say, that echo this, right, that it's white working class kids who consistently underperform. What's interesting about this study is they focused on pupils who are in the top quartile nationally at the age of 11. So in other words, bright kids, right? Kids who have promise, kids who should be going on to do well at school. And what they found, including this large-scale data from the database, that even though they were starting off with really, really strong promise at primary school, they weren't realising it. And in particular, when you look at what other groups of kids are doing, so disadvantaged Asian pupils, disadvantaged black girls in particular, often doing better than those disadvantaged white children.
And this is a UCL study coming out recently, so another one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the government does on it, because I think it's something they are aware of. You hear Bridget Phillipson talking an awful lot about it, and yet not much seems to actually be done.
Have you seen? You can't have missed this story over the course of the last few weeks. It's the latest chapter in the Beckham family spat. They've been pictured together, all of them except Brooklyn, for the first time, I understand, since the feud became so public.
Yeah, so this is an event in Paris, and it was all about fashion, so proper glitzy, great for Brown Beckham. Victoria Beckham was made, get this, a Knight of the Order of Arts and Letters by the French Ministry of Culture, and it's all in recognition of her services to fashion.
God, it is all so sad, isn't it? Big family event, one person not there. I don't really know what more I can add to it. It's very sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting though, if like Brooklyn was saying that everything's an Instagram call, it does look very well organised, I think it's fair to say as well. And one of the other things that I have to say that has really stood out to me, reading more about this story, is what I didn't realise, is that Victoria Beckham actually owned the rights to all her children's names since 2016.
Which I do find kind of amazing. Can you do that? We need to get into a rights law, but surely you can't claim the rights of someone's name whilst they're a child. So did they all agree to this after they turned 18?
I mean, I don't know. That's all. You've reached the limit of my knowledge on the Beckham saga.
Yeah.
But there they are. All looks very glitzy. Apparently, Harper, so the 14-year-old, had a Crocodile Hermes mini Birkin bag.
There we go. I mean, I think... yeah, it's all very sad.
I want some praise. I never had myself down as a fashion journalist, Well.
Yeah, look at that.
Are you impressed?
No, I'm
just reading it off the website,
but
still.
That was quite impressive.
Thanks.
I didn't realise you'd read that. I just thought you'd spotted it.
No, sadly not, no.
David Beckham's wearing a bespoke suit.
There you go.
I don't know who by, but it's well made. To be honest, he's always in...
Yeah.
It always turns out well.
Yeah, come for the serious foreign news, stay for the fashion advice.
You can see that we're slightly making sure we get to the top of the hour here. 10 seconds to go. We'll be back with the real news after this.
We'll look forward to that.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Good morning, thanks for joining us. It is 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
We're Sophy and Wilfred. A very good morning from me as well. Lots ahead.
The public face of Trump's immigration or ICE campaign in Minneapolis is leaving the city just days after another American citizen was shot dead by officers.
Rebellion grows over the decision to block Andy Burnham standing as an MP as the Labour Party worry about losing the by-election entirely.
Relief for millions of leaseholders as the government announces a major shake-up of the system, including a cap on ground rent.
Also today, it's Holocaust Memorial Day. We're going to be hearing the stories of survivors and remembering the people who were murdered, including 6 million Jews.
Plus, the Hollywood Western that's hit the West End. We're going to speak to the stars of the stage adaptation of High Noon.
A very good morning and welcome to the programme. Well, the top immigration official in Minneapolis is expected to leave the city in what many are seeing as an attempt by President Trump to de-escalate tensions following the killing of a second US citizen over the weekend.
Gregory Bavino has, in many ways, become the face of the Trump administration's ICE operation in Minneapolis. He's going back to his old job on the border, and we've got a different member of Trump's team leading the immigration efforts in Minneapolis, where, of course, tensions are still extremely high. Martha Kellner is there for us. She sent this report.
On this street in suburban Minneapolis, everyone is on alert. They believe this car has ICE immigration agents inside. They're doing what they can to disrupt. In Washington, President Trump is trying to de-escalate this situation, which has become politically poisonous, but tensions remain high.
You think that there's ICE agents inside this car?
I think so. I mean, that's what the neighborhood networks are saying.
President Trump has said that he's looking at reducing the number of ICE agents in this city.
No, they need to get out, all of them, every single one.
What is it doing to this place?
It's creating this suspicion of, like, every car that goes by, everybody watches as it goes by because you don't know.
They have just shot a man. They shot that guy. I know.
This video shows the aftermath of the killing of Alex Pretty. A doctor who was nearby rushed to this scene. He says he was initially blocked by immigration agents from providing medical care to Pretty. In court documents, the doctor said officers appeared to be focused on counting the victim's bullet wounds instead of performing CPR. Pretty was initially cast by the Trump administration as a domestic terrorist intent on a massacre, despite there being no evidence of that. But the White House is now striking a softer tone. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying President Trump will work alongside Minnesota's Democratic governor.
It is President Trump's hope and wish and demand for the resistance and chaos to end today. That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota.
Trump is now sending border czar Tom Homan to handle immigration enforcement in Minneapolis. Gregory Bavino, who had been leading the crackdown here, has been stripped of his role as Border Patrol commander. He was the public face of this immigration blitz that outraged many with aggressive tactics and his handling of Pretty's shooting. All over Minneapolis, there are quiet and steely acts of resistance. On the roadside in minus 23 degrees, a nurse is performing her own.
You know, they disarmed him and then shot him 10 times. And if that doesn't wake up every person in America, I can't see how anybody could feasibly or reasonably support the Trump administration or be comfortable with what's happening here in Minnesota.
Do you think Minnesota has been very deliberately targeted by President Trump?
There's an example being made out of us. We're a functioning welfare state. We take care of our people, and we're still a donor state. We vote blue. I think Donald Trump and his administration thought that it would be easy to walk into Minneapolis and rile people up.
Inside, get the lettuce inside.
Outside a church nearby, people are collecting and organising aid boxes. It's a scene more common to a disaster zone. food and hygiene supplies ready to be delivered to members of the immigrant community.
It doesn't make sense not to help them. There are people that, are in process, they're afraid to go out, but there are people that are already legal citizens that are afraid to go out. So I think we need to help them. This place has been great.
Thank you.
Just throw everything on top. I got the sideboards.
People here are fighting against the crackdown on migrants in so many ways. And maybe the climb down in Washington suggests it's working. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Minneapolis.
We'll continue to watch, of course, that story in the US to see if there's any more further significant climb down from President Trump. Now to politics here. Another week of breakneck pace of news flow. More than 50 MPs have signed a letter criticising the Prime Minister over the decision to block Andy Burnham from standing as an MP. They're now worried that Labour is going to lose the Gorton and Denton by-election altogether. Mari's here to talk to us about this. So there's two letters? One letter, two letters? Talk us through it.
Yeah, exactly. So originally this morning we thought there was one letter signed by over 50 MPs. That's been led by Clive Lewis. And doing a bit of digging this morning, I found out there's a second letter. So this is another letter also displaying their dissatisfaction to the PM around the blocking of Burnham. Now, this letter is from the executive team of the Tribune Group. There's a kind of Tribune Group in the Labour Party, represents about 120 Labour MPs. And there's a 7-people strong executive who have written this letter to the PM about the blocking of Andy Burnham in that by-election. So now there are 2. Now, my sources tell me there potentially is more. They're telling me at least 2. So for now, what we know is there are 2. And again, this is uncomfortable for the Prime Minister because the more widespread this becomes, the more difficult it becomes. Now, speaking to sources who have signed the letter that's been signed by 50-plus MPs, they tell me the names on that letter are from different wings of the party. It's not all one wing of the party. That, therefore, then adds a bit of pressure if you're starting to get letters from every wing of your party rather than a particularly disgruntled bunch. And this, therefore, potentially could start to spiral, but we'll have to see.
And this is the thing, isn't it? Because, look, the logistics of removing a leader for the Labour Party are not simple and not straightforward. I think it's worth saying. But there is a point, and I'm not saying we've reached this point now, I want to make it clear, that things become kind of untenable. Like, if you lose the support of multiple wings of the party, then it becomes very difficult to govern. And I guess that's partly why, the government trying to get out on the front foot today with what really is the kind of popular policy that is likely to appeal to, I guess, all wings, probably the Labour Party, this work that they're doing on leaseholds.
Yeah, absolutely. They're abolishing, well, they're not abolishing, they're removing the ability to charge anything on ground rent. So it has to be £250 as the cap. It's going to be abolished almost entirely after 40 years. So it'll be peppercorn rent, which is essentially very little. And this should be a really popular policy for Labour voters, for Labour members. It was in their manifesto. And therefore, this should be quite a buoyant, positive day for the Labour Party and Labour MPs. But really, they are not talking about this. They are only talking about leadership and about Andy Burnham.
Yeah, it's not just us, by the way, talking about it's Labour MPs. All they want to talk about is Andy Burnham.
It's absolutely true. Yeah. And so it's uncomfortable for the PM when he wants to get all the glory for this policy while his team from different camps are basically just trying to count down how long he's got left.
Mari, great stuff. Oh, we don't ground it, yeah. Mari, great stuff. Thanks so much for that. Now, one of the things that's going to be high on the Prime Minister's agenda will be, of course, his trip to China. He leaves for Beijing tonight. And just as he gets ready to set off, there's new reports this morning about China potentially hacking phones of senior officials in Number 10 between 2021 and 2024.
So it's something that we did ask the government about. We talked to Steve Reed this morning about those important changes on leasehold. We also asked him about those reports of hacking. This is what he said. We've got these reports on hacking. We've said yes to this mega embassy. Keir Starmer's out there in China. He's going to China. Are we a bit naive about the risk that China poses?
No. Fully alive to what the risks may be, not just from China, but from any foreign source that it might come from. Fully alive to that. China is also the second biggest economy on the planet. Over 370,000 jobs in the UK depend on trade with China. It's quite right we should do what we need to trade with China, but national security will always override all other concerns. That is precisely as it should be.
It's going to be a fascinating trip, this, for the Prime Minister. Obviously, he's taking a slew of business leaders with him. And it comes at a tense time.
Yeah, it does.
I think the most tense thing, which I thought was great having the perspective of Kim Darroch, the former UK ambassador to the US, is that Mark Carney's kind of been punished by President Trump in the last couple of days with the threat of further tariffs for having gone there and struck such a positive tone.
The Canadian Prime Minister.
The Canadian Prime Minister, yeah. So it's going to be a really interesting one to watch, obviously fresh off approving that embassy as well.
Yeah, exactly. Really interesting to see how it goes down with the MPs as well. We've got an interesting new study that we wanted to share with you today. This is really interesting. Researchers say that the changes in the brain when women go through the menopause are similar to those seen in Alzheimer's.
A very large survey. It was run by the University of Cambridge, and they found that the loss of grey matter might partly explain why women are at greater risk of dementia than men, which is another one of the significant takeaways of the survey, which Oliver's here to tell us a bit more about.
And grey matter, Wilf, is something that's really important for regulating emotions, storing memories, things that are linked to what happens when you have Alzheimer's. And what this study has found is that the same areas of the brain that is affected with people that have got Alzheimer's is where they're seeing these changes when women go through the menopause. And the striking statistic that we've been talking about all morning is that of everybody who has Alzheimer's in the UK, 2/3 of those people are women, which is stark.
It really is, yeah. It's such a big number, isn't it? And it's something, I'll be honest, until you were telling us this morning, I wasn't even actually aware of. I guess the big question for people is this knowledge going to help outcomes? Is it going to make a difference?
Not immediately. You know, research takes a long time and people can't expect that within 5-10 years we're going to have some sort of magic wonder pill. And the pills that we've got at the moment only go so far. So hormone replacement therapy, called HRT, is used by about 15% of women who are having those quite harsh side effects of having the menopause, memory loss, hot flushes at night, trouble sleeping. But that doesn't mitigate the loss of the grey matter that the researchers are seeing. So there is still a lot of room for the research to try and find these answers. And, of course, everybody who's got a mum, auntie, grandma will have seen how difficult it is for women going through the menopause. So desperately needed in terms of trying to find some of those breakthroughs to make women's lives easier.
Yeah, it really does feel as well something that, you know, we've only started properly talking about recently, and there is, I guess, a hope that that is going to help improve outcomes as well, just the increasing awareness and also increasing push to try and find, you know, effective treatments.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oliver, great stuff, thank you. Now we're going to turn to Ukraine now, and this morning there's been an attack on an energy facility in the southern city of Odessa. Officials say the damage is extensive, and that will only worsen the situation for many people living in difficult winter conditions. It's been more than 2 weeks since Russia obliterated the country's power grid. Residents still really struggling to cope without electricity. Our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, has this report.
This is just one apartment block in one city in Ukraine. But its residents tell a much wider story of survival as Russia turns their homes into a different kind of front line. Tatiana lives on the 9th floor. She tells us she takes slow breaths to ease the strain on her heart. There's been no heating here for more than 2 weeks, and power cuts mean the lifts rarely work.
Cold. It's very cold. I walk around shivering, especially in the mornings. I wake up and it's awful. Everything is icy. I turn on the oven and just stand there warming myself. What else can I do? That's life.
A life that was hard enough with the country at war. But Russia is targeting power stations, leaving more than 1 million people without energy in the middle of winter, with temperatures as low as -20. Daria offers her son words of encouragement on what must feel like an endless climb. He's only 2, she's 5 months pregnant, and their apartment is on the 16th floor. From her window, she shows us a nearby building here in Kyiv that was hit in a strike on the 9th of January. This is what she saw. Since then, the heating hasn't worked, The electricity is patchy and the water's unreliable, so they've temporarily moved out.
With a child, it's simply impossible to stay in the apartment all the time. We came yesterday and stayed for just 2 or 3 hours, and I froze so much that my throat started to hurt.
We look for people who've chosen to stay or have nowhere else to go.
We have been here from the very beginning. We went through all the hardest time here, the explosions, everything.
Yeva asks us to follow her.
How many pairs of socks?
1, 2, 3, and boots. But at home, I put 2 more pairs on top. It is extremely cold.
She wants to show us how burst pipes have left patches of sheer ice on the floor.
I think exhaustion is the hardest part. Every day you have to fight, you have to survive. You're not really living, days just blur into one another. There is no Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday anymore. It is just one continuous day of survival.
Now, it is pretty wet and windy out there with Storm Chandra, so we wanted to bring you some pictures, some live pictures to show some of the impact of that storm this morning. This is the south coast. The Met Office have issued an amber weather warning for parts of the southwest. These are the latest pictures from Portleven Harbour that you can see coming in now live, the live pictures coming in here. And we should say that the UK is really braced for a storm that you can see there in Cornwall, really starting to hit St Austell. It's been absolutely battered with rain there. Some pretty dangerous conditions you can see in the seas there in Cornwall.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to the Conservatives, to Andrew Griffith.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'll take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live.
They have gone up and up being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter. Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started. Coming up, we have got our interview with the Conservatives. Glad to see that we're joined now by... Oh, there you are. Sorry, looking in the wrong place. We're joined now by Andrew Griffiths for the Conservatives. Great to have you on the programme today. Thanks for being with us. Suella Braverman, the latest Conservative to defect to reform. I read that there are now more members of Liz Truss's cabinet in Nigel Farage's team than Kemi Badenoch's. Are you feeling a bit lonely?
Look, we've got a tough job to do. There's 120-odd of us, and we've got a lot of holding this government to account to do. I mean, today maybe we'll get the U-turn we've been calling for on business rates because the high street is bleeding out. I think it's a shame on one level, simply because I think for now, knowing Suella well, we've got the Conservatives' sort of policies that she's been advocating for years, leaving the ECHR, slashing stamp duty, cutting red tape. I mean, as someone like Suella who joined the Conservatives under Mrs Thatcher, you know, I feel now we've got the sort of platform from which we can win and govern this country well.
Can I just talk to you for a moment about the statement that was put out by the Conservatives yesterday? Because honestly, I was quite shocked by this. There was a statement that said it was always a matter of when, not if, Suella would defect. The Conservatives did all we could to look after Suella's mental health, but she was clearly very unhappy. I mean, that's an outrageous statement to put out.
Yeah, it's wrong. It's wrong. I didn't go into politics after business to play ad hominem character. The party retracted that statement, admitted it was wrong, replaced it, but I don't think that's right. I think that politics should be a contested domain. That's fine. There should be lots of parties trying to lead our country. I happen to think our party will have the best platform to do that. And it shouldn't be about people's individual character. It should be about their ideas, the things that they're going to say, the way they're going to work as a team.
Look, I acknowledge that the Conservatives apologised and they retracted it, but, you know, someone obviously thought that was an acceptable thing to say and put it out. I mean, do you need to look at this a bit more deeply? Like, what processes are in place? I mean, it can't just be one random person doing it. There must be some kind of process, some people thinking that was an acceptable thing to put out.
Yeah, and look, I do hope that thinking takes place. I'm the Shadow Business and Trade spokesman. We've got millions of brilliant businesses up and down the high street that I'm fighting for every day. So that's not my wheelhouse. But I've said I thought it was wrong. The parties said it was wrong.
So you'd like to see an inquiry into an investigation to what happened?
I mean, look, you'll choose your own words. I mean, clearly, I think people should learn. If there's been a human error, and there are human errors even in wonderful organisations like Sky, then people should look and learn and see what can be done differently. But I've been very clear. I don't think it was the right thing to say. I think we should be competing on the strength of people's ideas and how we're going to govern this country and how we're going to get this economy growing again, because it's just not, Sophie. It's bleeding out on our high streets.
Yeah, you're talking about pubs today, aren't you? And you're calling for this change in business rates.
I hope it's much more than that. So I think the Chancellor's just made a massive miscalculation for whatever reason on business rates. It's a really difficult tax on business. They've been running on fumes after things like her £25 billion national insurance rise, and it really is going to hurt a huge part of our small businesses in particular. Now, apparently we're going to hear something on pubs. I hope that's a bit of expectation management, and that it's actually going to cover the whole of the hospitality sector and beyond, because that's where the jobs are. It's not just pubs, although they're in the front line, but there's restaurants and hotels and hair salons and all sorts.
Can I ask you as well about the government's reforms to leasehold properties as well? Because this does feel like quite a significant step. So they're scrapping, or capping, I should say, a ground rent for leaseholders. They're also saying that there'll be no new leasehold properties. I mean, look, this is something that the Conservatives said they were going to tackle, and you failed. You put it in the too difficult pile. Are you glad to see Labour finally doing something about it?
I don't think that's entirely fair. I think there was a lot that was done. There was a lot of work on leasehold reform that's benefited constituents that I see, and there are some, you're right, where things still need to happen on terms of moving to common hold and ground rents. We haven't seen the detail of what the government's announced. I know there's been a lively debate within the Labour Party as well about where to pitch that. There's an important balance between protecting people's pensions, pension funds sound academic, but it's actually people's pensions themselves as well.
Are you worried about that then? Is that...
No, I just think there's a right balance to be struck.
Okay.
And the Conservatives, when we were in government, we did do an awful lot to improve the lot of leaseholders, but I accept there's more that needs to be looked at in this issue, but it's got to be done carefully.
And just finally, I wanted to ask you about China. Keir Starmer going to China today. On the very same day, The Telegraph reporting that China hacked into phones in Downing Street at a time when the Conservatives, you guys, were in there in the administration. Firstly, how worried are you to hear about that hacking? And secondly, is Keir Starmer right to still go to China?
So, look, briefly, worried but not surprised. I think anyone who's been inside Number 10 and around it knows about the ongoing espionage. I think it's probably the wrong time. I'm not against going, talking to China, having trading relations. We've always done that as the United Kingdom. But I think when there's so much going on at home, when the Prime Minister is on the ropes with things like his failed Chagos deal, which has real national security implications, giving or paying Mauritius, a Chinese ally, to take away an incredibly strategically important asset, I just think it's the wrong time for the Prime Minister to be going. He should be dealing with the mess he's created at home rather than fleeing once again.
OK, thanks very much indeed. Andrew Griffiths talking there. Coming up, got a bit of arts and culture for you. We're talking about one of the most famous westerns ever, High Noon. Not sure if you've seen the movie, but we're going to be talking about the stage version. That's next.
Welcome back. It's the Hollywood Western that was slammed by John Wayne as un-American for its critical portrayal of the community and disrespect towards American law enforcement. That was in 1952.
Yeah, so a bit of a read across, I think you could say. Well, now High Noon has hit the West End in a new stage adaptation. So how does it resonate with audiences today?
Delighted to say, joining us are the stars of this new adaptation that's on in West End, Billy Crudup and Denise Gough. A very good morning to you both. Thank you
very
so
much.
much for joining us, not least because obviously you were treading the boards until late last night. And Denise, tell us about the Cliff Notes version of the story for those that haven't seen the original.
God, it's so unfair to ask me to do Cliff Notes because I don't do anything in Cliff Notes.
We'll take a long form.
Yeah, do a long form.
We'll be here till this afternoon. It's based on the movie. Obviously, it's the first time it's been adapted into the play, and it's about the marshal of a small town who's called upon to... he's getting married at the beginning of the play, and then his nemesis comes back on the noon train, and so it's like an hour of seeing what he's going to do to protect the community.
And he sort of really stands up for what he believes in, even if those around him aren't backing him?
He does, and he's not entirely sure, but one of the problems for him is that the person that he's married is a pacifist. She's a Quaker. She's sworn off violence and guns. So he turns in his badge and says, "Okay, honey, no more guns." And then the message arrives, "You need guns." And he's like, "Ugh, this is a pickle." So
what are you going to choose?
Leave, and everybody in town is saying, "No, you should get out of here. This is a bad guy." And he's like, "No, I think that this community that I've been a part of for 15, 20 years, they've got great faith in me. They know that I mean to help them have a decent town and decent society, follow the law, that kind of thing." And everybody's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we want to help anymore. We're kind of sleepy." And so they try to bum rush us out of town.
And it brings me, I guess, Denise, to the next question, which is the sort of why now for the adaptation? But these things take a long time to adapt. Is this coincidence that it feels very relevant or long since planned?
I don't know. I find throughout my career, things that I do on stage seem to reflect the times there. It wasn't that we did it because of things that are happening in the world. It seems to me that art reflects back to us, and I think that it's a case of that. And it definitely has themes of what's going on in the world, but I don't think anybody came into it last year thinking that we were going to be where we are right now. It's reflecting something for sure.
It's a lovely way of putting it, that art reflects back to us, and how it can, the things that we feel we see in art, in great art, makes us think more deeply about what's going on now. Do you think is that something that you're seeing?
Oh, there's no question. These themes were around 2 years ago. These themes were around 10 years ago, certainly in America. And they're...
and today?
The reason that interesting plays in particular are done again and again and again because people behave the same way again and again and again. Generations forget, so then somebody else has to learn that lesson again. That's why you still do Greek plays. That's why you still do Shakespeare.
Angels in America.
Angels in America.
Yeah, that was huge. Doing that 20 years after it had been written, and yet it still resonated, because great writing is timeless, I think.
It will be there again.
Yeah,
It'll
exactly.
be important to hear that again.
Yeah.
What is your view, Billy, from London over the last few weeks of what's unfolding?
Things are great.
We're all super happy.
This is, it's a very difficult time to understand and be articulate about, particularly if you're living as saying somebody else's words. I've taken this job because I felt I could be more eloquent with somebody else's ways of phrasing things. So then to be in a position where you're meant to explore and talk about the kinds of complex issues that are happening on the ground in America in real time, it's not an easy thing to do, to be frank. But I do feel that the play and what Eric has done with it, and Thea, our director, and our entire ensemble, speaks to people trying to understand what's happening right now, trying to empathize with the kinds of positions people are being put in.
It's a very classically American story. Does it resonate well, do you think, with the British audience, the West End audience?
Yeah, it seems to. I mean, I don't think that everything that's happening now happens in other places too. I feel like we can relate because it happens all over the world. Like, for me, playing Amy as a pacifist, it's an incredibly brave thing to be in a lawless society, to be somebody who believes in non-violence, and yet people are forced into positions that they wouldn't. I feel like the play is saying, what would you do? And I feel like any work that I do, I'm always asking an audience to think, well, what would I do in that situation? And that's all I can offer as an artist, is to ask that question in my work so that I can be part of some conversation, I guess. Because I'm not a politician or somebody who's educated in all ways around things. I'm still learning myself, but doing this play allows me to be in a position where I can ask people, what would you do in the same situation?
Billy, I was listening quite closely to what you said previously about the importance of empathy and understanding different positions. But if you look at what's happening in the States right now, we've also seen, I guess, former presidents coming forward, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama saying now's the time to speak out and to stand up. Otherwise, those American values that have been there for so long are at risk. I just wondered your reflections on that. Do you agree with them?
Well, when I read this play, I was on a plane coming back from London, having just done a solo performance here on the West End, which was a fantastic experience. But when I found the play arresting then. And my response to Eric is, this needs to be up and running right now. People need to be shouting about this right now. So I've felt that about the kind of trajectory of American discourse and our inability to navigate the conflicts that we have with one another for some time. I was born in 1968, probably around the time that Robert Kennedy was murdered, and I can remember the feeling of discord from a very early age. My father was a conservative, my mom was a liberal.
That must have been interesting dinner party chats.
Fascinating. Well, they were divorced at a certain point, then they remarried each other, then they got divorced again. So that kind of sounds like America. We get married to each other, then we get divorced, and then we say, you look nice now, come on, let's get back together, or we fight too much. And so there is an aspect to it that's very familiar, unfortunately. But I do believe in the aspirational idea of America more than anything, that we will keep working towards a more perfect union, even through these conflicts. So,
and you still believe that now?
I still. I'm out here doing the play. I'm shouting about it every night.
Can I end, if given that we're a morning show, can I end with a morning show question?
Certainly. Which get into Corey mode.
Obviously,
firing.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say, obviously you play a, not us, please.
All right.
I'm going to hide.
See how you do with the question.
Well, I was going to say you play a power crazy, ruthless media
really hard
boss.
for me to get into it.
which is fictionalized.
That's correct.
Boss.
That's right.
None of our bosses are at all like that.
Yeah, we love the bosses. They're great. They're lovely.
They're actually in this building today. They're not always in this building.
We particularly love the guys who are
protesting a lot.
I know what they're thinking.
My question was actually whether or not. I mean, I love that you guys have dramatised to such great success. What is sort of the old bastion of network news, the morning show on a traditional channel? And I almost sort of wonder whether maybe this is for future seasons, or whether you look back on it, whether it should have been about a YouTube influencer, or it's just a really interesting snapshot in time as things have transitioned, as this show has come out.
I confess that was another thing that drew me to that material when I read it. Some of the things that I loved growing up were broadcast news and network, ways to talk about the influence of news on society and society's influence on news, and that continuing discourse, to me, in an entertaining way, it's a great opportunity to feel useful. Back to your point of like being a performer, if you can be useful in some of the work that you do, it's hard to be in a position where you feel useful in your work. So that's one of them.
Well, fantastic stuff, guys. Thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
Good luck with the ongoing run of High Noon to rave reviews in the West End. Billy Crudup and Denise Goff.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And now it's Holocaust Memorial Day today, a day to pause, to think about those people who lost their lives, the millions of people, including 6 million Jews, and also of course, those people who survived. We want to bring you a bit more of my interview with the Holocaust survivor, Janine Weber. Earlier, we heard Janine talking about her memories of when the war started, what it was like when she first saw the Nazis, the Gestapo. But she also has a message for people listening to her today, when people across the world will be remembering those who lost their lives. Talk to me about the ghetto. What was it like?
It was, well, people were starving. There was disease. There were corpses lying on the pavement.
Dead bodies on the pavement?
Dead bodies. And they were hanging people, and I've got, you know, a slide, a picture of this hanging people, and would leave them there for days, and forcing us to look at them, to frighten people. And the conditions always, my brother and I, we had to think, where do we hide when they hear the Gestapo? Because they were not there all the time, because they would only come if there was a group of them. They were frightened if there was one or alone. Because I must say, very soon the young people started fighting back. Although they didn't have weapons, whatever they managed to get, eventually the Gestapo killed them all. So we were in that room when my mother became ill with typhus. Typhus, it's a disease which can be cured if one has medication, but we didn't have any money. And it's a disease, you know, of poverty, of lack of hygiene and lack of food. And my uncle, in order to protect her, carried her into the cellar of the house, the building where we stayed. I went to see her, to be with her. My mother was looking at a distance. She didn't look at me, and she didn't talk to me. And I became very upset and very frightened.
How old were you?
I was 9.
Little girl.
Yes. And I became so frightened that I ran out. And I found my uncle, who told me that my mother had died. I don't know if she was already dead or not. So that was the last time I saw my mother.
I imagine, in a way, that was when your world changed, because you had your mum looking after you. She was with you in the little hole.
Exactly.
She was with you.
Yes.
As a 9-year-old, and then she's gone.
Yes. And yes, it was so, we were left, my brother and I, alone. My uncle got another family, Polish Catholic farmers, to hide my brother and to hide me. And again, he paid everyone. Now, this is terrible, because we were there when the daughter of the family, about 20, she came with a German soldier, what we used to call an SS. They were terrible, they were so cruel. They were really shooting the Jews, killing them. And I knew she brought him to kill us, because in Poland they would give, if they betrayed the Jews, the Poles, they would be given a little money or some goods like sugar, butter, you know. So I knew he was going to kill us. And they killed my brother. They buried him alive. He was 7. And it's, for some reason, he didn't want to kill me. He told me to start walking. I thought he might shoot me, but he didn't.
What was he like? How do you remember him?
You know, it's terrible to say, but I don't remember him. And I don't remember a lot about him.
That's not terrible to say, by the way. That's okay.
Yes. And he was, as far as I remember, he had blonde hair, because a lot of people in my family had blonde hair. Not my mother, she was a brunette. And I don't remember because for some reason I don't remember playing with him. And because he was 2 years younger, so maybe he was with other children, you know. And so I don't really remember how he was, but it made me very angry for many years against what they did to kill my brother, to kill a child. And I'm sure he had no idea what was going on. And when for years I used to cry at night. I've been always worried about my children seeing me crying. So anyway, and eventually I was helped by a therapist.
What is your message to people listening to you?
Yes, well, I have actually two, if you like.
Yeah, that's fine.
One is to remember what happened, because, you know, in Lvov there were nearly 150,000 Jews, most of them killed, and less than 2% survived.
Less than 2% survived?
Yes, less than 2% survived. And in Poland, 3 million Jews were killed. To remember this story, that innocent people, children, were killed. And also my message is to be kind to people, to be respectful, especially to minorities who quite often are looked down, persecuted, to be kind and tolerant. That's my message.
It's a wonderful message about the child, a brother there. You're looking now at pictures of Mela Tribic, who is meeting Keir Starmer in Downing Street for Holocaust Memorial Day. A similar story, really, to Janine. She was born in 1930 in Poland. She's a Holocaust survivor who also was forced to live in that ghetto. She, too, did survive the Holocaust by hiding, escaping, and finally being liberated. Mela Tribic there, Holocaust survivor, meeting Keir Starmer in Downing Street.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report. And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Welcome back. We're going to talk about the jobs market now for young people. And a few weeks ago, we looked into the issue of student loan debt and were really struck by the impact it's having on young people entering the workforce.
Yeah, it was extraordinary, the response, to be completely honest with you. So many people getting in touch with us saying how they're struggling to pay off their student loan. They've got no hope of ever being able to do so. So we thought we'd look a little bit more into the kind of figures around what's going on for graduates. So new research from the Centre for Social Justice says over 700,000 university graduates are out of work and claiming benefits.
So what's going on? Well, many young people blame the economy, with 7 in 10 wishing they were not starting their careers in the current economic climate. Let's bring in Amira Campbell, the UK President of the National Union for Students, the NUS. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and good morning too.
So I guess just setting this up for the broad thing is, are students feeling kind of dismayed, or I don't know what the right word it is, for the sort of level of opportunity they're finding when they graduate?
I mean, absolutely. It's been a really tough time for young people and for students in the current job market. I mean, we've got people that have, you know, when they first applied for university, when they first thought that they were going to be able to study, to upskill, to experience all of these different things, thought that they were going to be able to get a job after that. And all of a sudden, so many of them are facing unemployment, so many of them are taking jobs that they weren't trained for, or jobs that they need just to pay the bills. And so it's a really frustrating time for a lot of young people in that sense.
Oh, and why do you think this is happening? Because I'm guessing what you're saying is, and the research shows, that it's got worse for kids now, or young people. I shouldn't say kids, should I? Shows my age, but young people now, it's worse for them. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think there's a myriad of reasons. I think, firstly, we need to talk about the economy, and that's what so many people are putting it down to. We've got multiple... There's just a real lack of work opportunities for young people who are going into graduate entry-level jobs. But I think there's also a perception that was sort of the rise of AI as well, that those jobs are being replaced, right? But I think there's a real concern if we're thinking about businesses wanting to have long-term vision for their industries, et cetera, and be able to take on young workers. I mean, I think what makes it so bittersweet for a lot of young people is that they're taking on incredible amounts of student debt in order to be upskilled, to go into these various different industries. So to then face unemployment, or then to face jobs that have nothing to do with what they studied for, is really, really challenging.
The debt's clearly a massive part of it, and we've obviously been covering that in recent weeks. Is there also a broader point where you think that a lot of students sort of feel misled by the promise of university and what that would mean? Or is that the wrong way to look at this? Is it much more about the economy needing to step up and offer the jobs, and university is still the appropriate path?
I mean, I know I don't regret a second of my university experience, and I know that so many graduates feel exactly the same way. But what's challenging is that, as someone who's just getting their foot into the workplace, I've got this student debt looming over me. And I think if we really want to tackle this, I mean, there's a range of things we could do, or there's a range of things that the government could do, whether we're talking about free tuition, whether we're talking about universal basic income, whether we're talking about uplifting maintenance grants, or whether we're talking about shifting the threshold for the income that you start paying or repaying your student loan at. When you're in the first few years of your working life, I think it'd be life-changing for so many students if they weren't automatically paying off that debt straight away in their first years.
I'm really interested to hear about the range of things you're saying the government could do, because it feels to me that there's a couple of things you mentioned there that they could do kind of straight away, right? That are pretty straightforward things to do. And there's other things that would be pretty radical. But is that the point? I mean, are you saying that, look, we do have a jobs market that is under massive pressure. We do have the threat of AI, which could be transformative for the UK economy. Does the government still need to start being radical? Do we need to start talking about things like universal basic income?
Well, I'm coming at this as the president of the National Union of Students. If we could start taking on, and I know you called them radical, but really tangible changes that would completely shift the way we look at higher education, if we really invested in the education of young people, I think that would be absolutely incredible. Yes, there are the more short-term tangible changes that I would love to see the government take, but I think you're right. We are in a point in time where we are calling for that absolute turnover, an absolute shift in the way that...
So they're being too timid? Do you think they're being too timid on policies then?
I mean, I think we're in a situation where government after government have let down young people and have not invested in the futures of our youngest generation, of learners, of workers, et cetera, et cetera. And I think young people are fed up. I think we've had enough. And there is an opportunity to turn this around still. And I think a lot of us have faith that that will happen, or that some action is going to be taken. I mean, we saw the reintroduction of maintenance grants as the beginnings of those steps. But we need more. We need to see more, because so many young people are being let down day on day.
Amira, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Amira Campbell from the National Union of Students.
Now, it is wet, it is windy, it is potentially quite dangerous out there, so we thought we'd just bring you the latest live pictures from the south coast. This is really bearing the brunt of Storm Chandra. The Met Office issuing an amber weather warning for parts of the southwest. So it doesn't look too bad, I have to say, in Portleven, but just have a look at the next one.
Here's St Austell in Cornwall, looking actually not too bad either now.
What? Have you seen those waves? I wouldn't fancy being on a boat out there, would you?
No, but nor do I plan to. I'm not going fishing. Anyway, it's calmed down a bit, but the sun is rising and not too bad. And here's Teignmouth in Devon.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
That's what you call a weather shot.
Found some pictures to match our rhetoric.
Yeah, exactly.
Well done, guys.
Well done. Oh, my goodness, look at that. Well, look, it is dangerous out there. There's a lot of weather warnings. It's going to be bitty cold. If you want to email us your pictures overnight, we'll try and share a couple of them in the morning tomorrow. So do hit us up with those at mornings@sky.uk.
Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it as always. Don't go anywhere, because up next, Gareth has Sky News Today for you.